Major Sarah Brannan arrived at her office 15 minutes before she was due to report to General Henry Powhatan Clark. She sorted through her mail looking for a letter from Kevin Kerney. There was no envelope with either a New Mexico postmark or his familiar scrawl. Disappointed, Sarah set the mail aside, took off her fatigue jacket, and glanced at her wristwatch. It was evening in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she wondered if Kerney was home from work. With the demands of his job as deputy chief of the New Mexico State Police and his gloomy description of the small guest house he was renting, she doubted he spent much time at home. Both Kerney and she were working long, hard hours in pressure cooker jobs and camping out in less than inviting quarters. Late March in South Korea had brought a series of cloudy, dreary days that made spring seem a long way off. Sarah yearned for sunshine and home. But with several months remaining on her tour of duty, it was too soon to start daydreaming. Her office desk faced a full wall of situation maps documenting all recent North Korean DMZ excursions, infiltrations, and violations. As commander of Allied G2 ground reconnaissance and intelligence units, she was directly responsible for monitoring North Korean troop activity along and inside the DMZ. Her squads had to catch whatever the electronic eyes in the sky missed. Sarah routinely accompanied her squads on select patrols to assess their effectiveness and efficiency. For the last 46 years, battle-ready armies had faced each other across a swath of rugged mountains 2.5 miles wide and 150 miles long that cut across a Korean peninsula, keeping the zone free of any human activity except intermittent skirmishes. Once blasted by artillery, bombed and strafed by aircraft, burned and left barren by infantry, the DMZ now flourished as a nature preserve. The reforested mountains, abundant grasses and wildflowers, the deer, brown bears, and wildcats that grazed and fed peacefully in the valleys and the high country reminded Sarah of her family's Montana sheep ranch and Kerney's still unrealized hope to return to his ranching roots in New Mexico. When G2 had received advance notice of the itinerary for the Secretary of State's South Korean visit, Sarah concentrated her attention on Panmunjom, the neutral village within the DMZ 50 miles due north from Seoul. The Secretary had scheduled a quick visit to the site to be accompanied by high-ranking military and civilian dignitaries. After a series of late-night sweeps at Panmunjom, Sarah had got permission to go into the DMZ for a closer look. She wanted to be sure that the North Koreans weren't up to something. 2 nights before the Secretary of State's arrival, Sarah and her team belly-crawled to the open perimeter surrounding the village, where they waited for the full moon to set. Under cover of darkness, Sarah spread her people out and put the area under close surveillance. For hours, nothing moved, but Sarah ordered a ground sweep into the village for a final inspection look. As Sarah and her team crawled across the clearing, automatic weapon fire opened up from 3 hidden positions, taking out her point man. Sarah popped flares into the night sky, called for cover fire from the infantry platoon stationed behind the wire, and kept the team moving forward as rounds whined overhead. The green dots from the AK-47 tracers, the red dots from the M60 machine gun tracers, and the searing white of the flares cast carnival colors across the night sky. Using rocket grenade launchers, the team took out 2 of the positions and stormed the 3rd, capturing a wounded North Korean soldier. As Sarah pulled back with the wounded North Korean and 2 wounded team members, the enemy answered with return fire from behind the village. Another soldier took a round, but Sarah got everyone out. They hit the safety of the fence, and a bank of 10,000-watt spotlights lit up the village. All shooting stopped. At dawn, Sarah took a platoon of infantry back into the DMZ to inspect the area. They found 3 tunnels with shielded ceilings to block any traces of body heat that could be detected by satellites. Dug from the North Korean boundary, the tunnels ran to within 500 feet of the viewing platform that looked over the DMZ and were positioned to rake the viewing platform in a crossfire. Commando sniper rifles with silencers and telescopic sights were retrieved from the tunnels. Then, Each tunnel was sealed and destroyed with explosives. Weeks later, Sarah was still waiting to hear what the CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency had to say about the incident. The Beltway spy shops had taken full control of the investigation and dropped a heavy security blanket over the episode. She had put her people in for commendations and medals, but hadn't heard a word back through the chain of command. Perhaps the incident would be buried so deep that there'd be no recognition of her team's outstanding performance. Sarah looked at her wristwatch again. She had 5 minutes before her meeting with General Clark. She put on her fatigue jacket and walked across the street to the headquarters building. At his desk, General Henry Powhatan Clark, commander of Combined Forces in Korea, thumbed through the Defense Intelligence Agency report that had been delivered to his quarters late last night by special Pentagon courier. The contents of the report, along with a letter and attached orders from the Secretary of Defense, had prompted his request to have Major Sarah Brannan report to him. She sat across from him now, meeting his gaze directly. Clark knew that Major Brannan was an exceptional officer. Any man who saw only her good looks, her sparkling green eyes, strawberry blonde hair, and the mischievous line of freckles across her nose would be seriously underestimating her. "We finally received a conclusive intelligence report on the sniper operation. A North Korean diplomat defected and confirmed the assassination plot was mounted by a fanatical element within the North Korean officer corps. They wanted to force Kim Jong-il into a war with South Korea." Sarah nodded and waited for the general to continue. "The 3 snipers had orders to kill the South Korean president, the Secretary of State, and me. Personally, I like to think that shooting an American 4-star general would have pushed us into a war." "I'm glad that didn't happen, sir." "So am I, Major. I understand you've been asking my Chief of Staff about the status of your requests for promotions and commendations for your team." "I have, sir." "I like an officer that goes to bat for her people." "They've earned the recognition, General." "Agreed, Major." Clark put some papers into Sarah's hands. "Each enlisted rank gets a meritorious promotion and the Army Commendation Medal. Additionally, the wounded men receive Purple Hearts." "That's good news, sir." "There's more, Major. At the request of the Secretary of State, and upon the recommendation of the Secretary of Defense, you are to receive the Distinguished Service Medal." "I don't know what to say." "Well, let me congratulate you, Colonel Brannan." "Excuse me, sir?" "We couldn't promote everyone else on the team and leave you out now, could we? You'll get your orders for your next duty assignment within the week." "Where to, sir?" "After you've taken some home leave, you'll be attending the Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth." "But, sir, I wasn't scheduled to attend C&GS until next year." "We can't have a highly decorated new light colonel running around without her C&GS college ticket punched. You'll need it in your personnel jacket for your next promotion to full colonel. Considering that you kept the North Koreans from sending me home in a body bag, it was the least I could do." "Thank you, sir." "No sweat. Any time you want to return to my command, Colonel Brannan, just give me a holler. I want nothing but stud officers serving with me, and I don't give a damn what gender they are." Sarah stood outside the headquarters building, thinking this was probably one of the best days in her 10 years as an officer in the United States Army. She remained on the sidewalk trying to calculate the miles from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas to Santa Fe. She guessed it to be 700 miles. It certainly put Kerney within striking distance. She smiled as an idea crossed her mind. She and Kerney had been writing to each other more frequently as the time for her to rotate stateside grew closer, making plans for a visit. Maybe she'd just show up in Santa Fe unannounced and early. Sarah's smile turned into a slightly wicked grin. She had hammered her sexuality into submission by working 18-hour days and avoiding even those men who were not off-limits under the current sexual relations policies. Avoiding the whole sex issue had been the most realistic way to survive with her career intact in a combat-ready command. And, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Brannan thought, she was damn tired of abstinence. Kevin Kerney sat in the passenger seat of Dale Jennings' truck while his old friend drove down a San Miguel County dirt road about 50 miles due east of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was an unusually warm and pretty early April morning, but Kerney wasn't paying any attention to the weather or the vistas. His thoughts were on Irma Ferguson. Irma was his mother's college roommate and lifelong friend. When his parents died in an auto accident over 25 years ago, Irma became one of the few people left in Kerney's life with a link to his boyhood on his family's Tularosa ranch. Irma taught art at the State University in Las Cruces for almost 40 years. After her retirement, she became one of the most renowned landscape artists of the Southwest. In her 70-odd years, she'd never married, never had children. Kerney had last seen Irma in November on a visit to Las Cruces. They went out to dinner, reminisced about Kerney's parents, and talked about his college years when Irma served as his surrogate mother. A massive stroke had killed Irma in early February, and now Kerney was about to take a second look at the 10 sections of high country ranch land she had left to him. He'd known that Irma owned property she once used as a summer retreat, but the size of it, 6,400 acres, came as a complete surprise, as did her bequest of the land and the old cabin that stood on it. Kerney glanced quickly at Dale, now the last living person connected to Kerney's childhood years. Dale's closely cropped sideburns showed a hint of gray, and his face was weathered from years working in the scorching sun of southern New Mexico. Dale ranched near the Tularosa, on land handed down through 3 generations. He'd been Kerney's closest neighbor and best boyhood friend. They passed through a village with an adobe church and a cluster of homes. Dale drove through the unfamiliar settlement that seemed frozen in the late 19th century. "What's the name of this place?" "Ojitos Frios." "Cold springs, huh? If we find one, maybe I'll give you a good dunking to wake you up. You've been off in dreamland since I rolled up to your door early this morning." "I guess I have. I still can't believe Irma put me in her will. That lady loved you like a son." Up ahead, a fast-moving stream ran across a dip in the road. Dale dropped the transmission into low gear and rattled the truck through the water, keeping an eye on the trailer hitched to the truck. The trailer held 2 horses Dale had brought up from his ranch. One of the animals, Soldier, was a Mustang Kerney had trained and later named in honor of his dead godson, Sammy Yazzie. Sammy had been murdered while serving in the Army at White Sands Missile Range on land that once belonged to Kerney's family. Working with Sarah Brennan, an Army officer at the base, Kerney solved the crime and the men responsible for Sammy's murder were dead. Even though Kerney had given Soldier to Dale, his old friend always planned to return the horse. Maybe now he could. Only 3 weeks had passed since Kerney had been informed by Irma's lawyer and executor, Milton Lynch, of the bequest of the land and the cabin, and due to the demands of his job as deputy state police chief, he'd been able to manage just 1 quick trip up from Santa Fe to look over his unexpected windfall. What Kerney had seen looked promising. The foot of the low mesa held rich grassland, and a live stream wandered near a ramshackle cabin. But most of the land was on the mesa, and Kerney didn't have a clue what to expect in the high country. With Dale supplying the horses and coming along for the ride, as well as a map supplied by Lynch, Kerney planned to see it all before the weekend ended. The road turned east, then north, as the valley widened and a long ridgeline popped up dense with trees that climbed steep slopes. Beyond, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains rolled back into the horizon, peaks still capped in deep snow. The cabin came into view. "That's my mesa." Kerney directed Dale through the open gate and got out of the truck as soon as it came to a stop. "In a hurry?" "You bet I am." Old stone walls sagged under a rusted pitched tin roof. The front door and small windows were boarded up with scrap lumber. Dale thought it looked completely useless. Off in the distance he could see the outline of Hermit's Peak, 2 massive summits that stood like the hindquarters of a prehistoric animal. Dale heard the sound of hooves on metal and left the truck to find Kerney leading the horses out of the trailer and down the ramp. Dale reached for Pancho's halter. Pancho was his best trail horse, sure-footed and with endurance suited for long rides. Let's get going, Dale. Slow down, cowboy. Slow down, shit. I want to cover it all before sundown. Saddle up. Dale grinned back. It had been a long time since he'd seen Kerney look so damn happy. An old ranch road petered out at the base of the mesa where a stock trail began, winding through a dense thicket of juniper and pinon pine trees. Halfway up the trail got rocky, and the horses picked their way carefully through loose stones and small boulders. They hit the top and encountered a stand of young ponderosas that gradually thickened into a dense climax forest. Kerney turned to look at the rolling valley below. His eyes followed the cuts defining the deep-running streams that converged in the village of San Geronimo. The hills beyond the village cut off from view all but the uppermost third of Hermit's Peak, and now to Kerney the mountain looked like two giant loaves of homemade bread set out to cool on a windowsill. Every time I look at that mountain, it seems different. You're not wrong about that. It'll be the last nice view we have if these woodlands don't give way to some open country pretty soon. You don't like fighting your way through the brush, Dale? Nope. Reminds me too much of work. Well, then you'd better pray for open country. They came out of the trees 1,000 yards from the ridge line where the ponderosas dwindled away and grassland took over. A barbed wire fence barred their passage, and they followed it, looking for an opening. As he rode, Kerney eyed the wide mesa. There were small stands of pinon and juniper trees sprinkled over the land, and folded rock outcroppings along the edges of shallow depressions. They entered the grassland through an old cedar-poled gate and moved down an arroyo into a dry basin. The open range, Kerney guessed, took up 4,000 acres of the 10-section tract and showed no sign of recent use. He figured the neighboring rancher who leased the grazing rights had decided the rest of the land for a season or two. As they came out of the basin, Kerney caught sight of the windmill and stock tank. A black dog with brown stockings limped away from a grove of trees, carrying something in its mouth. Even from a good distance away, the dog looked skinny under its thickly matted fur. Kerney couldn't quite make out the object in the dog's mouth. As he moved in for a closer look, the dog froze, dropped the object, skirted around Soldier, and scampered for cover in a grove of trees, yelping in pain as it ran. Kerney looked down at the object on the ground, fully expecting to see a dead rabbit. It was a medium-sized, chewed-up, athletic shoe. He dismounted and retrieved it. Dale caught up, looked at the shoe, and shook his head. That dog sure isn't much of a hunter. A retriever, maybe. Do you want to leave the pooch here and move on? No, it's hurt. We'll round it up. As Kerney started to remount, the dog broke cover, carrying another shoe. You know, Dale, a dog carrying one shoe I'd call mildly curious. But a dog with two shoes piques my interest. Maybe it just likes to collect shoes. Could be, but let's find out. Do you think you can fetch that dog for me? Sure thing. What are you gonna do? Check out that stand of trees. Don't you ever stop thinking like a cop? Probably not. Kerney pushed his way through some low branches and knelt down, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light. The dog had dug out a small hollow at the base of a pinon tree. Kerney's eye caught a touch of color in the loose dirt. Using a twig, he brushed away the dirt and uncovered a comb. He backed away and scanned the ground of the surrounding trees. He saw a scrap of fabric that looked like denim. Next to it was a half-buried bone, with a human foot still attached. Kerney had seen enough. Whatever else there was to be found, he would leave it to a crime scene unit and the District State Police office in Las Vegas. He came out of the grove just as Dale rode up carrying the dog over his saddle. Find anything? Yes. The shoes were left here, with some human bones. What are you going to do? I left my cell phone in your truck. We'll head back and call the district office. Then what? Officers and a crime scene unit will come out and search the area. Damn, I'd like to see that. Yeah, I'm sure you will. You sound grumpy. This is not the way I wanted to spend my weekend. Do you think you got a murder on your hands? I always think the worst when people turn up dead. Maybe you should call this place Skeleton Mesa. That's cute, Dale. Dale shrugged his shoulders. What about the dog? It's a neutered male. I make him to be about 5 or 6 years old. He needs a meal and a bath real bad. Kerney looked at the mutt. Mostly black with brown markings around the eyes that matched his stockings, he had flecks of gray on his chest and a salt and pepper tail. He was hairy, filthy, skinny, smelly, and scared. I'll keep him. You need to give him food, water, and a name. I can handle it, and we'll call him Shu for now. Kerney spent more time than he liked briefing the two officers who showed up at the old cabin. Russell Thorpe, the rookie patrolman, responded to Kerney's phone call. 6 feet tall, with a weightlifter's build and a boyish face, Thorpe nervously questioned Kerney under the watchful eye of Sergeant Gabriel Gonzalez, his field training supervisor. After double-checking Kerney's statement for accuracy, Thorpe bagged the two sneakers as evidence and went to the patrol unit to call for a response team. Sergeant Gonzalez turned to face Kerney. Sergeant Gabe Gonzalez, with 20 years on the force, had deep-set creases on either side of his face. His eyebrows turned up at the corners of his eyes, and a stubby chin gave him a squared-off, serious cast. We'll have a helicopter here in 30 minutes with a crime scene unit. Good enough, Sergeant. Did your rookie do his job right? By the numbers, he'll be a good one. Chief, do you want a copy of the field report sent directly to you? You bet. Gonzalez left to watch over his rookie, and Kerney tended to the dog. Having already fed and sprayed him, he put him in the horse trailer with a basin of fresh water and a dirty sock. Shu took the sock in his mouth, shook it, wagged his tail, and sat, looking pleased with his new possession. Kerney turned to find Dale holding out Soldier's reins and grinning. What are you smiling about? Hell, I'm having a good time. Cops, skeletons, homicide. This sure beats watching a police show on television. We'll stop by the crime scene so you can have some more fun. Kerney took the reins and swung himself into the saddle. It took them a half hour by horseback to reach the grove where Kerney had found the bones. Gonzalez and Thorpe were doing a field search around the perimeter of the trees, while two crime scene techs worked in the shadows under low branches. A figure emerged from the grove, and Kerney recognized Melody Jordan, a senior crime scene technician who specialized in forensic pathology. Jordan did all the preliminary assessments of human remains for the department. Aside from being highly competent, Melody was an attractive woman. No more than 30, she had lively brown eyes, a mouth with a sexy little pout, and wheat blonde hair. Born and raised on a ranch in the Hondo Valley, she had a frank and casual style that Kerney found charming. Melody walked in his direction, pausing briefly to brush some pine needles out of her hair. You made quite a find here, Chief. We've recovered a pelvis and some bones from the lower extremities, femurs, fibulas, and feet. The pelvis strongly suggests it was a female. I'd guess she's been dead about a year, maybe less. The skeleton is incomplete? So far. There's some tool marks on the bones. From the looks of it, I'd say the body was sawed or cut up. Was she killed here? That's hard to say, maybe not. Was she dismembered here? I don't know. We're looking for trace evidence now. If we find fibers, hair, or blood stains, we'll have a clearer picture. But don't count on anything. Weather probably washed it all away. I'll take the usual soil samples for analysis. Maybe we'll get lucky and some foreign matter will turn up. Did you find the scrap of fabric in the comb? We did indeed. It's bagged and tagged. Do you have anything that points to the cause of death? Dream on, Chief. We got bones here, not a body. But I think the killer knew how to butcher a carcass. Any ranch hand worth his salt knows how to butcher. Find the rest of the skeleton. Melody looked out over the mesa. It could be scattered anywhere. There's a lot of ground to cover here, Chief. I know it. Bring in additional help. I want a full sweep of the mesa. Melody nodded and watched the two men ride away, thinking Kerney looked very hunky on horseback. Dale waited until they were out of earshot. That's a nice-looking woman. Yes, she is. Kerney, that was a 1,000-watt smile she gave you when we showed up. Did you know that a lot of relationships nowadays start in the workplace? Is that a fact? That's a fact. You should take advantage of those opportunities when they come along. Since when have you become an expert on relationships? I read about it somewhere. I thought so. But I've been living with women for over 20 years. A wife and 2 daughters can teach a man a lot about how women operate, how their minds work. I defer to your experience. That'll be the day. Think you have a chance of finding the killer? There's always a chance. They rode south through a thicket of big sagebrush that spread across the grassland. The mesa rose gradually and seemed to run hard up against the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. They crossed a break of cholla cactus and entered another large sweep of open country. All Kerney saw told him the range had been well rested. New grass was greening up nicely along the unforaged knee-high blue grama. His mind started racing with all that needed doing to put the land into production. Reality hit. Starting up a ranch wasn't going to be cheap. It would take a big mortgage to get things underway, and Kerney had no idea if he could swing a large bank loan. The thought that he might not be able to pull it off put a knot in his stomach. Kerney gestured towards a stand of ponderosas that defined the far edge of the mesa. Let's see what's on that other side of those trees. They followed a game trail into the woods, tall pines cutting the afternoon sun to half-light, and reached a treeless, rocky shoulder that jutted out over the back side of the mesa. Below, in a small defile at the edge of a narrow valley, a 40-acre swath of trees had been clear-cut. Only stumps, dead branches, and slash remained. An alluvial fan of gravel and sand spread out from the small occasional stream that ran through the defile. Erosion had begun in the sandy soil. Water filled down-cut troughs twisted around tree stumps at the edge of the stream. Jesus, who would do something like that? Good question, Dale. Kerney tried to contain his anger, carefully nudging Shoulder down the slope. In the defile they scoured the area and found tire tracks that petered out on a rocky jeep trail that climbed up the adjoining mesa. 100 feet in, they discovered a cut barbed wire fence and a discarded motor oil container. Kerney had started the weekend with no intention of doing any police work. He was totally unprepared to collect or document evidence. He left the container where it was, staked it with a tree branch, and noted its location. Back in the defile, they inspected the tree trunks. The absence of weathering pointed to recent harvesting. What do you think, Kerney? I think we got a poacher who sells firewood for a living. Someone who knows his way around the area. He sure picked a spot to cut where he wouldn't be seen. Exactly. You're going to lose this acreage to erosion if you don't act fast. About the best you can do right now is slow it down and keep it from spreading. It's going to take a chunk of money and a lot of hard work to save it. I know. Do you think the poaching and the murder are connected? Could be. You never know. They rode back to the crime scene. Kerney could see Melody Jordan in the distance at another grove of trees. She turned and waved, but she was too far away for Kerney to tell if she had a 1,000-watt smile on her face. He found Sergeant Gonzalez and filled him in on the wood poaching. Do you want me to jump on it right away, Chief? How far along are you here? Nothing more is turned up. We'll be back out in the morning. Do you think Officer Thorpe can pick up some evidence and photograph tire tracks without your supervision? He should be able to handle it. Have Thorpe bring back a sample of the cut barbed wire. We might get a good tool mark to use as evidence. Will do. Enough daylight remained for Dale and Kerney to follow the south end of the mesa back to the cabin. They dismounted to the clamor of shoes scratching at the metal floor of the horse trailer. The mutt was trying to dig his way out of captivity. When Kerney spoke to the dog, it stopped scratching and sat expectantly, eyes fixed on Kerney. You'll have to wait a few minutes, boy. Shoe's tail flapped in response. Dale got busy with dinner, and Kerney tended to the horses, watering them at a stream and feeding them each a bag of grain. Then he hobbled them nearby for the night on some good grass where they could graze. He led Shoe out of the trailer and tied him to the bumper. The dog rolled on his back and lifted his front paws in the air. Kerney gave him a tummy scratch. When dinner was ready, Dale found Kerney studying a map. According to this map, Nestor Barella owns land that parallels mine on the back side of the mesa. Dale handed him a plate containing a large steak. He might be worth talking to. Yes, he owns the grazing rights on my property. He sure hasn't been using them. Maybe he went into the wood-cutting business instead. Kerney took a bite of steak. This is good. Homegrown, range-fed beef. Can you pay the taxes on this place? I'm trying not to think about it. The appraisal is due next week. I don't have a clue what the inheritance tax will be. It'll be a pretty penny. Yeah, and it'll take a huge mortgage to cover the taxes and make the improvements the place needs. I've been yearning for some high country summer grazing land. What are you saying, Dale? This land is like a grass bank waiting for cattle that need fattening up. I got yearlings that'll add 300 pounds easy in a summer up here. Do you want to buy me out? I had a partnership in mind. Your land, my beef. I'll take out a loan each year to make the tax payments, and you give me half interest in the property. You carry the banknote for the improvements. That way we share the load. I won't let you borrow against your land on my accounts. It's too risky. You're one stubborn son of a bitch. I know it. Well, think about it. It might work. I didn't know being land rich would be so damn frustrating. If you want a ranch, you're going to have to use somebody else's money to do it. I guess that's true. Hold off until I know what the taxes will be, okay? And save your steak bone for Shu. It's already got his name on it. In the morning, Kerney borrowed Dale's truck, promising to return in an hour. He wanted to pay a friendly visit to Nestor Barella and see what kind of neighbor he had inherited. The ranch road leading to Barella's place was an expensive piece of work, graded, crowned, and topped with packed base course. It was far superior to the poorly maintained county road. The headquarters sat in a horseshoe canyon about 100 acres deep and half as wide. Kerney looked the place over. The most prominent building was an indoor arena near a large horse barn. The main residence dominated high ground at the back of the canyon. It was enormous and obviously positioned for the view. All in all, it looked like Barella had sold the place to someone with a hell of a lot of money who had converted the cattle operation into a horse ranch. He stopped at the horse barn, where a handcrafted sign above the doors read, Horse Canyon Ranch. He could hear the sounds of men and animals inside the barn. A middle-aged Anglo man wearing a stained felt cowboy hat and a pair of work boots caked with manure and straw walked out to greet him. Kerney introduced himself by name only. Is the foreman here? I'm the ranch foreman, Emmett Griffin. What can I do for you? I'm looking for Nestor Barella. Barella sold out 3 years ago and moved to town. I understand he leases the Ferguson land. He does, but he doesn't really use it. He puts a few cows on it each spring, fattens them up, and slaughters them for his freezer. It keeps Ferguson's taxes down and fills Barella's stomach. That's a pretty expensive way to fill a freezer. It sure the hell is. Do you think Barella would be willing to consider a sublease? We've tried. He won't sublease it, and the Ferguson woman won't sell. My boss would love to buy that property as a buffer. A lot of the big spreads east of here are being carved up and sold in 5 to 20 acre tracts. Alicia Bingham doesn't want that kind of development along her boundary. She likes her privacy. Is your boss here? Nope. She should be back in a day or two. Do you know how I can contact Barella? Not really, but I heard the old man moved his whole family into one piece of land. Thanks for your time. Hell, I'd rather talk to you than muck out stalls. Good luck with old Nestor Barella. You'll need it. Back at the cabin, Kerney found Dale inside, knee-deep in rotting hay. You might as well knock this damn thing down and start over from scratch, Kerney. You've got vermin droppings and black widow nests everywhere. He held out a yellowed, chewed-up piece of stationery. What's this? Part of a love letter from Irma Ferguson? To whom? Can't tell. Kerney studied the faded, handwritten letter. It spoke of a starry night on the mesa, not liking the idea of sleeping alone and bodies entwined. It carried Irma's signature and had no date. Good for her. I hope she had a lot of fun with him, whoever he was. Want to look for more letters? We'll let Irma's affairs of the heart stay where they are for now. Kerney stepped outside. Let's go. I want to find out how those poachers hauled that wood away. There has to be an outlet from the valley through the next ridge line. Let's see if we can find it on the north side. We haven't covered that stretch of land yet. Lead the way, partner. They rode off Kerney's land toward the mountains where the country road veered toward San Geronimo. An unimproved dirt track sliced into a canyon along a small stream, showing signs of recent vehicle travel. At the junction where two small creeks converged, snow covered the ground. Fresh tire tracks forked up the side of the foothills. They topped out to find a high mountain meadow, wedged between a small mesa and the mountains. The meadow was fenced, and a locked gate and no trespassing signs barred their passage. Halfway in the meadow stood a new timber frame house with a blue metal pitched roof. A child's bicycle leaned against a covered porch. No motor vehicles were present. A rectangular greenhouse had been erected at the far end of the meadow, a good distance from the house. Built with concrete blocks and rough-cut lumber, the roof joists were covered with thick translucent plastic panels. "They sure are tucked away in here, Kerney. Are we going in?" "We haven't been invited. How about I buy you lunch in Las Vegas?" "It's a little early to eat." "It won't be after I track down Nestor Barella and talk to him." "We're packing it in?" "As far as the trail riding goes. We may have found a neighbor who just might know something about the poaching. I'll pay him a visit when he's home." "Then why go see Barella?" "Because he may know something the neighbor doesn't." "Makes sense. You really do think like a cop." "It's habit forming." Shu sat in the back jump seat, panting quietly as they made the short 15-mile trip to Las Vegas, New Mexico. The city, situated on the edge of the high plains with Hermit's Peak and the Sangre de Cristo Mountains looming in the background, was staging a comeback. A number of old buildings had been renovated, new businesses had opened, tourism had picked up, and newcomers were moving in. They stopped at the local police department, and Kerney got directions to Nestor Barella's house. Barella lived just outside the city limits on land along the Galias River that he turned into a compound for his extended family. As they drew near, the front door to one of the houses swung open and a stocky man in his late 30s walked off the porch to greet them. Kerney got out and limped to meet the man halfway. His right knee, shattered by a bullet in a gunfight, ached from his time in the saddle. "I'm looking for Nestor Barella." "Are you here about the horse for sale?" "No, I'm here about the Ferguson lease." The man thought about answering, shrugged it off, and nodded at the house where an elderly man stood framed in a doorway. "Talk to my father. He's home." Kerney reached the porch step and smiled at a sinewy man somewhere in his late 70s. His legs were bowed from years in the saddle. The back of his hands carried the scars from a lifetime of hard physical work. He had a full head of gray hair and sharp, clear brown eyes. "Senor Barella? My name is Kevin Kerney. My friend and I are interested in buying your grazing rights on the Ferguson land for the summer." "I'm not interested." "I'd be willing to pay a premium for it. I don't keep it to make money." "Mind telling me why you do keep it?" "It hasn't been put in production for some time as far as I can tell." "You been on the land?" "Just for a quick look. I heard you weren't grazing it." "It's posted. Stay off." "I'd like to talk to the owner." "You can't. She's dead." "Do you think the land will come up for sale?" "Everything is for sale at the right price." "Is anyone cutting wood on your leasehold?" "Nobody cuts wood on that property." "You sure?" "I would know. You ask a lot of questions." "I'd really like to find some land where I can summer over my cattle. I've heard there is a high meadow north of the mesa. Would that serve?" "It's a small parcel on a bad road. You couldn't run more than 5 cows on it. A family from California bought it. The man used to teach college or something like that." "I'm sorry to take so much of your time, Senor Barella." "Stay off the property. It is still under my care." He shut the door in Kearney's face. Later that day, Kearney made a quick stop at the state police office where he found the district commander on duty. Captain Victor Garduno, a lean, big-shouldered man with a self-contained, confident manner, briefed him on the continuing search of the mesa. Additional skeletal remains had been found about a mile from the original crime scene, including parts of the spine, ribs, and an arm bone. But no skull. "We're still looking, Chief." Kearney gave Guarduno a brief rundown on his conversation with Nestor Barella and his hunch that the wood could have been trucked out through the meadow. I'd like to learn more about Nestor, his family, and the owner of the timber-framed cabin. Barella said the guy who built it moved here from California. That won't be a problem, sir. And can you get me some crime statistics for the San Geronimo area? Consider it done, Chief. Sergeant Gonzalez has asked for a record search on missing women for the last 10 years. You should have the report on your desk when you get back to your office. By the way, Sergeant Gonzalez would like to remain the primary officer on the case. Are you recommending him? He spent 5 years in criminal investigations before he made his sergeant stripes. I use him as an investigator whenever I can't get an agent assigned out of Santa Fe. Give him the green light. Kerney got back to the truck, and on the way to lunch, Dale popped the George Strait tape into the cassette deck and cranked up the volume. Kerney groaned quietly. Country and Western was his least favorite music. Shu crawled out of the back seat, sat on Kerney's lap, and stared at him with serious eyes. Either the dog didn't smell bad anymore, or Kerney was getting used to him. He was without a doubt the hairiest beast Kerney had ever owned. Kerney's apartment was a furnished one-bedroom guest cottage in the South Capitol neighborhood, within a short walk of the Santa Fe Plaza. Although bland and boxy, it had a fireplace, reasonably decent furniture, and a small enclosed patio. Kerney liked the neighborhood with its old houses, narrow streets, and the mature trees that gave a small-town feeling to the area. Before leaving for the office, Kerney got Shu settled and left the patio door open to the small backyard so the dog could do his business outside. At the state police headquarters, Kerney found Melody Jordan in the laboratory. She looked up from the microscope and smiled when Kerney approached. "Great timing, Chief. I was about to ask dispatch to track you down. What have you got?" "Several facts that may help. The body was dismembered while clothed. I found minute fibers embedded in the bones, denim and wool. We might be able to match that fabric scrap you found with the maker, and we may get lucky with the wool fibers. Do you have any hunches?" "The victim wore high-end apparel, Chief. Not the kind of clothing bought at discount stores. But we'll have to wait for our fiber expert to confirm it. More good news. We may not need the skull to make an ID. The left humerus shows a severe old break about a third of the way down. It isn't the kind of injury that would go unattended." "That is good news. Have the bones told you anything else?" "Tentatively. Remember, we have to factor in the weathering of the bones. But I'd give the victim's age between 20 and 30 years, based on the microscopic examination of the fibula we found." "The victim's race?" "Probably Anglo or Hispanic, based on the size of the pubic bone. Find the skull and I can narrow it down further. If you do, I'll have a facial reconstruction made." "What's next?" "I want to see if I can match up the saw marks to various types of hand or power tools. That'll take some time. I'll also do an X-ray examination to see if I can discover any foreign or metallic objects. I still don't have a clue how the woman was killed." "You do good work, Miss Jordan." Kerney turned away and started for the door. The 1,000-watt smile Dale had noticed once again lit up Melody's face. Kerney left thinking there were a lot of drawbacks to being a boss. Sergeant Gabe Gonzalez arrived at the district office after dark to find a pile of paperwork waiting for him. He thumbed through it quickly. It contained a note from his captain assigning him full-time to the murder investigation, a preliminary report of Melody Jordan's examination of the skeletal remains, a copy of the most recent crime statistics for the San Geronimo area that had been faxed to Chief Kerney, and a list of missing persons reports on women who had disappeared in northern New Mexico during the past 10 years. Gabe read Melody Jordan's report first, before scanning the computer files on the 10 women reported missing. He found no medical information on a woman with an old fracture to the upper left arm. 8 of the missing women were residents of the state, and 2 were tourists passing through. Only 3 fell within the age range Melody had established. He would work on those 3 as a short list before moving on to the others. If nothing promising materialized, he'd access the National Crime Information Center databank on missing persons and see what popped up. He picked up the crime statistics report for San Geronimo that Kerney had requested. During the last year, there had been 2 incidents of cattle theft, 2 reports of illegal wood harvesting, and 3 acts of vandalism to cabins, along with 8 burglaries to summer homes. Gabe got out the 2 prior year statistical reports and paged through the property crimes information. Up until last year, San Geronimo had been virtually crime-free. He made a note to check with the county sheriff for an update on recent criminal activity in San Geronimo. If the rising crime trend had continued into the new year, that would be very interesting information. He put the reports away, checked the time, and grimaced. Since his divorce last year, getting home at a reasonable hour had become important to Gabe. He had 1 child from the marriage, Orlando, who lived with him, attended the local university, and worked part-time flipping burgers. Both were busy, but when Gabe worked the day shift, he liked to get home early and fix dinner for the 2 of them. Tonight, that wasn't going to happen. He called home, got the answering machine, left Orlando a message, and started organizing his field notes for his report. It would take a good 2 hours to do the write-up, make fresh crime scene sketches, and mount the photographs on exhibit forms. Deputy Chief Kerney expected the report on his desk first thing in the morning, and Gabe wanted to be sure it got there complete and on time. He sat back in his chair, rubbed the back of his neck, and thought about Kerney. He was an outsider who had been quickly elevated to deputy chief, but his reputation as an investigator was outstanding. In short order, Kerney had personally cleared 2 major cases, a multi-million-dollar Santa Fe art theft and the murder of a small-town cop. But he was also an old friend of the state police chief, Andy Baca, which kept the issue of cronyism alive among the department gossips. Gabe decided not to worry about whether or not Kerney was a good boss. That question would be answered as Gabe learned more about how the chief operated. Before heading home, Kerney made a quick stop at a supermarket where he bought everything he needed to care for a dog. In the apartment, he found Shoe on his feet, wagging his tail, with one of Kerney's sneakers clasped in his mouth. 3 more shoes had been brought from the bedroom and scattered around the living room floor. "Quite a collection you got there." Kerney extracted the sneaker from the dog's mouth. Wet with slobber, it had chew marks on the heel and tongue, and some of the padding had been gnawed away. "I guess it's yours now, boy." He dropped it on the floor in front of the dog. Shoe snatched it up and gave it a shake. The other shoes the dog had fetched were only slightly damaged. Except for the mate of the shoe he'd given to the dog, Kerney put the rest away with a reminder to himself to keep the bedroom closet door closed in the future. He spent an hour brushing tangles out of Shoe's matted coat, cleaned up the dog hair on the carpet, and fed the mutt. As Shoe ate, Kerney picked up and fanned through Saturday's mail, looking for a letter from Sarah Brandon. He'd written to her last week. Given the distance his letters had to travel, he didn't expect a rapid reply, but occasionally their correspondence crossed in the mail. This time there was nothing. He hoped Sarah hadn't changed her mind about coming to Santa Fe when her tour of duty ended. All of the mail was junk, except for an envelope from Emma Ferguson's personal representative and executor of her estate. He opened the envelope and read Milton Lynch's letter. The appraisal had come in at $2,000 an acre. The land was worth almost $13 million. The final appraisal report would be mailed to Kerney within the week. He stared at the amount in stunned silence before calling Lynch's home phone number. Lynch answered on the 3rd ring. "I thought I might be hearing from you." "How in the hell can that land be worth $13 million? "I haven't seen the complete report, but it seems that some of the ranchers in the area have sold out to higher bidders or are subdividing their land. Doesn't the land qualify under the farm use value reduction provision of the tax code?" "The $2,000 per acre figure is the reduction." "What'll the taxes be?" "You'll be taken to the cleaners, I'm afraid." "How much will I owe?" "Federal taxes will exceed $6 million. I haven't factored in the state tax bite." "How soon do I have to pay?" 9 months after Irma's death." "Is that a firm date?" "The tax forms are due then, but I could file a 6-month extension for payment on your behalf." "Is there anything I can do to avoid selling the land?" "Installment payments to the IRS are possible. The estate can spread out the cost over 14 years. But the IRS will charge interest, 4 to 6%. "That amounts to over $400,000 a year, plus interest." "That's right." "Do you know who sold Irma the land?" She bought it from Nestor Barella in 1960. Don't ask what she paid for it. It would only depress you. May I say something, Mr. Kerney? Please do. Irma wanted you to be able to keep all of the land. She knew how much it would mean to you. I advised her to establish a trust in your name, and she directed me to do so, with the proviso that I encumber sufficient resources in the trust to pay the inheritance tax on the property. Her death occurred a week before the trust was to be established. I see. If you want to keep at least part of Irma's gift, let the estate sell some of the property for taxes. You'll still own a sizable chunk of land. I'm no rancher, but it seems to me you would have enough acreage left to start a small cattle operation. I'll think about it. Let me know what you decide, Mr. Kerney. Remember, you stand to come out of this very well off. I'm aware of that. Kerney hung up in a foul mood, realizing he had no call to be so abrupt with Milton Lynch. He was a good man doing a good job. Irma had picked her executor wisely. What grated Kerney had nothing to do with the windfall inheritance, although the amount of his net worth on paper staggered him. The thought of giving up 3,200 acres felt like fate slapping him down again. As a child, he'd watched his parents lose the ranch on the Tularosa to the army when White Sands expanded. Now, he faced losing half of the best and perhaps only opportunity he would ever have to return to ranching. It felt like a bad dream or a sick joke coming back to haunt him. Seconds before the doorbell rang, Shu raised his head and let out a long howl. The dog followed Kerney to the front door, the sneaker firmly clasped in his jaws. Kerney opened it to find Sarah Brannan smiling at him from the front step. Kerney grinned in delight. Good God, what are you doing here? The army took pity on me and sent me home early. You have a dog, Kerney. Does it have a name? His name is Shu. I can see why. He's pretty mangy looking. He just moved in. He's had a rough time of it. Do you have any other roommates I need to know about? None. She held out a bottle of wine as she stepped inside. Can I buy you a drink? Absolutely. I think I need one. Don't you like surprises? This one I do. She slipped out of her coat and dropped it on the arm of his sofa. She turned back and gestured at the bottle in Kerney's hand. Let's get started celebrating this reunion. Sarah sat at the kitchen table while Kerney searched for wine glasses and a corkscrew. He took his time doing it, glancing at Sarah out of the corner of his eye. He had a snapshot of her, but it didn't convey the full impact of her physical presence. Her strawberry blonde hair was a bit shorter now, further accenting the sensual line of her neck. Her green eyes sparkled with a hint of something Kerney couldn't quite decipher. Even in blue jeans and a mock turtleneck pullover, Sarah looked stunning. He brought the glasses to the table, sat across from her, and poured the wine. Cheers. To you, too. Tell me, Kerney, have you slept with many women since I've been gone? How would you define many women? More than one? Then I have not slept with many women. Only one? One. Tell me about her. Her name is Karen Cox. She's a lawyer, an ADA. I got a note from her recently. She's hooked up with a ranch foreman. Any regrets? No. And you? I've been a very good girl, which hasn't been easy. Will you tour me around Santa Fe? Of course. Well? Well, what? Start the tour. I'd love to see your bedroom. With her head on his shoulder and her leg draped over his thigh, Sarah gently scratched Kerney's chest with her fingernails. That was a lot of fun. It was my pleasure, Major Brannan. It's Lieutenant Colonel Brannan. Sarah's statement surprised Kerney. He had spent one tour in Vietnam late in the war as an infantry lieutenant, and knew that only a remarkable circumstance would accelerate a very junior major to light colonel. Congratulations. How did that happen? I'll tell you about it later. Why so secretive? I'm not accustomed to telling war stories. Have you ever wanted to be a father, Kerney? I always thought I would someday. Still interested? I'm too long in the tooth. Not at all. Sarah's fingers traveled down to the gunshot scar on Kerney's stomach. She rubbed it lightly and felt the rough texture of the skin and the hard abdominal muscle underneath. Then her hand traveled below Kerney's hip to his crotch. Don't change the subject. Are you thinking of having a baby? I'm putting a stud book together just as a possibility. Your name is on the list. I'm honored to be considered, but you'd be taking a chance. I've never sired any offspring. You seem to have the necessary enthusiasm for the task. She rolled on top of Kerney, and for a very long time conversation ceased. Up early, Gabe Gonzalez made coffee and sat at the kitchen table reviewing his completed reports. It was much too soon for Orlando to be up, and the house was quiet. Teresa, his ex-wife, had forced Gabe to buy out her equity in the house, a Victorian built by his grandfather on a street behind the Las Vegas Public Library. It took Gabe a second mortgage to do it, and he was still paying on an earlier loan used to renovate the house after his grandfather had sold it to him. He had his eye on a lieutenant's vacancy that would ease some of the monthly pressure to pay bills. Orlando was on a full scholarship at the university and worked a part-time job to cover his personal expenses, so having him living at home wasn't much of a burden. But Gabe still walked around most of the time with a nearly empty wallet. He looked at the clock on the kitchen stove, and Gabe headed out. He took the paved road past the county detention center and followed it to where the pavement ended. Several miles in on the dusty dirt road, he passed through San Geronimo. Chief Kerney had asked Gabe to check out the owner of the cabin to the north of his property. He turned onto the dirt track that led to Carl Boaz's cabin in the meadow. Finding out about Boaz had been easy. His property had been added to the fire department response grid after the cabin had been built. Supposedly, Boaz lived there with a girlfriend and her young son. If Gabe hadn't been driving a 4x4 State Trooper Ram Charger, he would have stopped and walked in. The road was that bad. He made the last turn near the top of a hill and saw several crows circling above a mound on the ground. He got out, walked to the mound, and bent over it. A dead man looked up at him with blank eyes. Cold nighttime temperatures had left the body covered with frost. The bullet hole in his forehead was perfectly round, and his face was tattooed with pinpoint hemorrhages from powder burns. He had been shot at very close range. Gabe put on a pair of plastic gloves, tilted the body slightly, searched the back pockets for a wallet, found it, and looked for a driver's license. Issued by the state of California, it identified the dead man as Carl Boaz. Kerney's bedroom phone rang. He reached for it and checked the time. It was 7 o'clock. He listened to the dispatcher's report, asked for a helicopter to stand by, and hung up. He looked over at Sarah, wondering how she could look so sexy on such little sleep. They had stayed awake talking through most of the night, catching each other up. Now Sarah sat up in bed. What is it? A homicide at a cabin near my property. Want to come with me? Doesn't that sound romantic? I'll pass. I'm going back to sleep, then I'm going shopping. I haven't bought any new clothes in almost 2 years, and I need a few things to wear. Okay. I'll leave you a key, and I'll be back in time to take you out to dinner. Pick a nice place to eat. I plan to be dressed to kill. Are you in a hurry to leave? The chopper will wait for me. Sarah kicked off the bed covers. Good. Come here. Several hours into the preliminary investigation of Carl Boaz's murder, Gabe saw the chopper carrying Chief Kerney come over the mesa and land in the meadow. From the porch, he watched Kerney walk towards him, limping badly for a few steps before smoothing out his gait. Gabe knew Kerney's knee had been shattered in a gunfight with a drug dealer. It had happened some years ago when Kerney was with the Santa Fe PD. It wasn't the only time the chief had used deadly force. In high-risk situations, a man knew how to keep his cool and survive. In his 20 years as a cop, Gabe had never been under fire. He wondered how he'd stack up if he had to put it on the line. Gabe had assigned Russell Thorpe the job of receiving evidence and recording the personnel entering the crime scene. Down at the greenhouse, Ben Morfin, the district narcotics agent, was conducting an inventory of marijuana plants. He was at 1,000 and counting. From the top of the meadow, the greenhouse had looked like a cheap, thrown-together structure. But hidden from view on the south side, a row of solar panels fed power to the bank of batteries that ran fans and heating coils. The system was so efficient, Boaz probably needed to use the backup generator only after 3 or 4 consecutive cloudy days. Kerney reached Gabe. "Bring me up to speed, Sergeant." Carl Boaz, age 35, died last night from a single gunshot wound to the head, fired at close range. There are no wants or warrants on the victim and no record of any arrests. Boaz held a doctorate in philosophy from a California university. Seems he dropped out of academia and went into organic gardening, specializing in the commercial cultivation of marijuana. How much? When the tally is done, I'm guessing it will exceed 2,000 plants. It could be a 7-figure cash crop. Is there any tie-in between Boaz and the skeleton on the mesa? Just the dog so far, Chief. There's a snapshot in the cabin of Boaz, his ex-girlfriend, her son, and the dog you found on the mesa. Want to know the dog's name? Tell me. Buster. I guess every kid should have a dog named Buster, no matter who he lives with. Tell me about Boaz's ex-girlfriend. Her name is Wanda Knox. She moved back to California about a month ago and started writing Boaz letters telling him he was a self-absorbed asshole. She also wanted him to ship Buster and her son's bicycle out to the coast. Boaz kept a journal, Chief. He sold drugs at Southern California colleges before he decided to go into the production end of the business. I've got a list of his dealers and his contacts. DEA will like that. Yeah. Boaz also noted in his journal that somebody by the name of Rudy owed him $400. No last name. I think Rudy may be a local. The entry was made 6 weeks ago. There's an earlier entry from last September showing that Rudy paid Boaz the same amount. For what? Unknown, but I have my suspicions. I found the route the poacher took to haul the wood out. It comes right through the meadow. I think Boaz gave the poacher access to the clear-cut area and got paid for it. Boaz didn't cut the wood himself. His truck tire tracks don't match up with any of the impressions we found on the route. Also, there is no evidence that he hauled wood out to cut and split here. No chips, no sawdust, no bark, at least not in quantity. So, Sergeant, we need to find Rudy. Do you want me to start canvassing? Not yet. Give me Wanda's current address before I leave. I'll ask the California authorities to locate and question her. Maybe she knows who Rudy is and how to find him. I'd like some help, Chief, if you can spare the manpower. 2 agents will be up from Santa Fe in the morning, and I've already cleared it with your captain to assign the district narcotics officer to work with you. They're yours as long as you need them. Thanks. Do you want the tour now? Indeed I do. There's something I want to show you in the greenhouse. Boaz had a little cactus garden separate from his marijuana crop. Just a single small variety of 20 plants. I've never seen it before. Neither has the narcotics agent. We think it might be used to produce some exotic type of hallucinogenic. By noon, Sarah found what she wanted. Simple, elegant silk tops in earth-tone colors, a wonderful full-length, long-sleeved brown dress with a high neckline that looked very sleek when she put it on, and new designer jeans that made her look equally slinky. After so many months in starched fatigues and tailored military uniforms, the fabric felt satiny and sensual against her skin. At a lingerie shop, she came away with some tasty little items that were comfortable to wear yet decidedly provocative. She made her beauty salon appointment just in time and spent a wonderful hour letting Patrick somebody or other pamper, condition, and trim her hair. Back at Kerney's apartment, Shu met her at the door, sneaker firmly in his mouth, tail wagging, still looking mangy as hell. She decided the dog needed some TLC. She fanned through the yellow pages and found a pet grooming business that would take a client right away. Come on, Shu, let's get you cleaned up. That way we can both knock Kerney's socks off. After taking the tour of the crime scene, Kerney spent several hours helping Gabe systematically search the cabin, which yielded further information on Wanda Knox and her son. He now had a very good photograph of the woman, plus a small address book. Back at police state headquarters in Santa Fe, Kerney prepared a brief summary of the known facts pertaining to the Boaz murder case, typed up questions for Wanda Knox, and photocopied the address book. According to the letter sent to Boaz, Wanda currently lived in Arcadia, California. Kerney called the Arcadia PD, talked to the chief, told him what he needed, and got quick agreement to have a detective follow up as soon as Kerney faxed the information. He cleared some paperwork off his desk and checked the wall clock. If he hustled, he could get home in time for his dinner date with Sarah. When he entered his house, he stared at Shu in disbelief. The dog was almost unrecognizable. His hindquarters had been clipped, his belly shaved, his paws and legs trimmed, and his coat glistened. Only the sneaker in his mouth identified him. The door to the bedroom was closed, and Sarah was nowhere in sight. "Hey, what'd you do to my dog?" Sarah stepped out of the bedroom. "He got a shampoo, a cut, and a pedicure. He's a handsome brute, isn't he?" Kerney found it hard to answer. Sarah wore a long brown dress that covered her from ankle to neck and revealed every curve of her body. "Both of you look fantastic. I'm glad you noticed. Change your clothes, Kerney, and take me to dinner. I'm hungry." The Canyon Road restaurant was in a low adobe building tucked behind some expensive condos. The maitre d' met them at the door and led them through a small antechamber into the dining room. Kerney wore a raw silk oatmeal-colored sports coat, a charcoal linen shirt buttoned at the collar, dark gray wool dress slacks, and a pair of black alligator cowboy boots. He looked distinguished and handsome. Two women dining at a nearby table gave Kerney the once-over. Sarah smiled sweetly at them and spoke to Kerney. "So, when do I get to see your ranch?" "It's hardly a ranch at this point, and I can't see how I'm going to keep it." Kerney filled Sarah in on the money he'd have to pay in taxes and how Irma's instructions to give him the land free and clear hadn't been executed before her death. "How sad, Kerney. You know, my parents have been selling sections of the ranch to my brother and me so we can avoid the heavy inheritance tax, plus giving us the maximum tax-free gift each year in land. We'll be half owners within the next 5 years." Kerney had visited the Montana sheep ranch with Sarah. It covered 100,000 acres that encompassed 3 lush valleys and some beautiful high country. "Do you plan to return to the ranch after you retire from the Army?" "To visit, not to live. I'll let my brother and his wife buy me out as they can. They're the ones that have put the blood, sweat, and tears into it." "When will you retire?" "I'm thinking in about 10 more years. I like my career, but it's hell on any kind of a personal life. I'll be 42 if I retire with 20 years of service. If I stayed in any longer, I'd just hit the glass ceiling. There's only a handful of women in the Army who wear stars. You could be one of them." "That would be nice." "You're only 2 ranks away from Brigadier General." "Those are 2 very long steps. After Lieutenant Colonel, very few officers make the cut." The waiter interrupted with the wine list and menus, then departed. "This is turning into a lovely evening, Kerney. I think I'm going to have to put a star after your name in my stud book, along with appropriate remarks on my performance." "Of course. Do you know what I'd like to do after dinner?" "What's that?" "Show you my new lingerie." "More research for the stud book?" "Exactly." In the late evening darkness, Gabe Gonzalez stood at the open gate watching the district narcotics agent, Ben Morphin, load the last of the marijuana plants into a truck. The crime scene techs had left, the medical examiner had come and gone, Boaz's body had been removed, and Russell Thorpe was on his way to the district office with all the evidence that had been collected. At the greenhouse, the truck headlights flashed on and the engine kicked over. Morphin drove to the gate and stopped. "Exactly 2,678 plants. Boaz just missed a big score. He was 4 weeks shy of a 7-figure harvest." As Morphin drove off, Gabe closed and locked the gate and walked down the hill. The moon rose above Hermit's peak, spreading a pale velvet light over the mountain and the valley. It made everything look deceptively peaceful. It was too late to think about fixing dinner. He would get a pizza on the way home, spend a few minutes with Orlando, and then start in on the paperwork. Gabe watched as Orlando licked his fingers and reached for another slice of pizza. He was a good-looking boy who'd inherited his mother's dark eyes and even features. "Mom called. She wants me to spend spring break with her in Albuquerque." "I thought you'd be working over spring break." "Yeah, most of the time. I told her I'd come down for a couple of days." "She'll like that. I'm probably not going to be home much for a while anyway. What's up, Dad? I'm working 2 murder cases in San Jeronimo. A drug dealer and an unidentified female. No shit? Were they killed at the same time? No. All we've got on the woman are some bones that were scattered on a mesa. No identification? Not yet. Where did you find the bones? Near Nestor Varela's old ranch. Think you'll be able to find the killers? It's too early to say. How come you keep doing this kind of work? Don't you get sick of it? Murder and all? You sound like your mother. Retire, Dad. You've earned it. Too many bills. Sell the house. I'm not going to stay in Las Vegas after I graduate from college anyway. You've been saying that for the last year. Why is living in your hometown so bad? You never used to feel this way before. I just want to get out and see the world, okay? Okay. But the house stays in the family. You can have it when you get sick of seeing the world and move back home. Now go hit the books. I've got my own homework to do. After dinner, Kerney and Sarah went back to his apartment. Kerney got the fireplace going, exiled Shoe to the patio, lit some candles, put a Brahms piano concerto on the stereo, and poured some brandy. They never made it to the bedroom. Their clothes were scattered on the furniture and the floor. They'd certainly been in a hurry. The brandy hadn't been touched. Later, Sarah picked up her brandy glass and stretched out on the carpet in front of the fireplace. She felt delightfully ravished and a little weak in the knees. Take me camping, Kerney. I need to wake up to the smell of pine needles and the sight of a New Mexico sunrise. Where do you want to go? Your ranch, of course. Where else? Sure. Give me the morning to get a few things done. That's fine with me, Kerney. Plan on being late for work. Again? Oh, yes. Kerney arrived at his office to find a phone message from a detective at the Arcadia PD waiting for him. He called back and spoke to Detective Sergeant George Broom. I wish all my assignments were this easy. The address you gave us for Wanda Knox turned out to be a residential treatment center for addicted mothers. They call it a therapeutic community. It specializes in women with children. What kind of drugs does Wanda Knox use? Cocaine. She says Boaz got her started. She's 28 and still a looker, Chief. She didn't act upset when I told her Boaz had been murdered. I guess the romance soured. Did she ID Rudy? She doesn't know his last name. She said Rudy paid Boaz to give him access to the land where he cut the wood. Did you get a description of Rudy? That and a composite drawing. Rudy is Hispanic in his mid to late 30s, clean-shaven, about 5'10". He's stocky, weighs in at about 220 and 240 pounds, and has brown eyes and brown hair cut long below the ears. That's helpful. Do you want something even better? Are you holding out on me, Sergeant? I couldn't resist, Chief. Wanda's kid is a miniature toy car nut. Lane, that's the kid's name, is 8 years old. He told me Rudy drove a dark blue 3/4-ton long bed Chevy pickup truck with a winch on the front bumper and a hydraulic lift mounted in the bed. The kid really knows his vehicles. That narrows the field. You want the license number? Does your sense of humor get you in trouble, Sergeant? All the time. Broom read off the numbers and letters for the license plate. According to the kid, the truck has permanently installed wrought iron side railings that extend above the cab. He even drew me a picture of the truck. Fax everything you got to me. It's on the way. That question you had about those cactus plants you found in the greenhouse? What about them? Wanda said she found them in the canyon where Rudy was woodcutting and transplanted them to the greenhouse. She was going to give them as presents. I don't think you've stumbled on a new hallucinogenic. Thanks, Sergeant. As he hung up, he gestured to Melody Jordan, who had been standing in the doorway, to have a seat. She placed a copy of her follow-up report on the victim's bones. Kerney quickly scanned the information. Do you still think the victim's clothes were expensive? It's the kind of clothing I'd like to wear if I could afford it, Chief. But I've got a question about the old fracture to the left humerus. The way the bone was set looks odd to me. How so? Either the doctor who did the job wasn't very good, or there was a considerable period of time before the victim received medical attention. I'd like to consult an outside expert. Whom do you have in mind? There's a physical anthropologist, Campbell Lawrence, from Indiana University in residence at the School of American Research. He's also a medical doctor. I attended one of his seminars on human remains identification. He's top-notch in his field. I'd like to get his opinion. How soon can you set it up? I've already spoken with him. He can see me this morning. He'll do the examination gratis. Good. Keep me informed. Melody hurried out and Kerney went to the fax machine where the pages of Sergeant Broom's report were spilling onto the tray. The last page was a handwritten letter from Wanda's son. It read, Dear Chief Kerney, Sergeant Broom said that I could write to you. If you find my dog Buster, please send him back to me. He's mostly black with some brown and white on his legs and tummy. He has really long hair. He ran away the day my mom and I left New Mexico. I love Buster very much. He is the best dog in the whole world. I hope you find him. Thank you. Lane Knox. Kerney went to the window and glanced at the foothills below the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. He thought Lane Knox certainly deserved to have his dog back. But sending Shoo, or rather Buster, off to California wasn't a happy thought. Kerney really liked that mutt. In the small conference room at the Las Vegas District State Police Office, Gabe Gonzalez had assembled his team for a briefing. The group consisted of Russell Thorpe, Ben Morfin, who was off meeting with a botanist at the university about the cactus plants, and 2 agents sent up from Santa Fe, Frank Haug and Robert Duran. Gabe started the briefing. Okay, guys, let's get started. Technically, we have 4 different crimes. A homicide of an unknown female, the murder of Carl Boaz, the illegal production of a controlled substance, and wood poaching. Ben Morfin will handle the narcotics case. Duran, I need you on the mesa looking for more bones. We got some good initial findings from forensics, but I'd be a whole lot happier if we could complete the skeleton. Haug, I want you to work on a short list of missing women. Forensics reports that the upper left arm bone suffered an old fracture. That, along with the age estimate of the victim, and the fiber analysis may help us make an ID. Thorpe will help me develop a list of area woodcutters and firewood sellers. We spend today, and today only, on information and evidence gathering. We've got enough right now to suspect that the man who killed Boaz is a wood poacher. So tomorrow we go looking for Rudy. Haug waved his paperwork at Gabe. From what you got here, Rudy could be the key to all these felonies. Wouldn't that be a nice early Easter present? The ballistics report came in a few minutes ago. A .38 caliber bullet killed Boaz. Also, the lab lifted a clean fingerprint from the oil container found at the poaching site. The print isn't in the computer, but the lab can match it when we find the perp. We got a good tool mark from the barbed wire samples we collected, and some good plaster cast tire impressions. The tread marks left at the cabin gate and the clear-cut area are identical. The briefing completed, Gabe held Thorpe back after Haug and Duran left. Thorpe, this just came in from Chief Kerney's office. I want you to have a look at it. When the young officer had scanned the material, Gabe asked him what information he would act on first. Well, Sergeant, according to motor vehicles, the registered owner is Joaquin Santisteban. His driver's license photo doesn't match with the composite drawings of Rudy, and Wanda Knox's physical description is way off in terms of height, weight, and age. She said Rudy is in his mid to late 30s. Santisteban has a date of birth that makes him 27. Very good. What else? Well, the kid got the truck right. The make and model of Santisteban's vehicle corresponds with his description. Santisteban's got a clean record. No wants, warrants, or arrests. No military service. 1 speeding ticket in the last 3 years. He paid the fine. His mail is delivered to a neighborhood postal box in San Geronimo. What would you do with this information? Find and talk to Santisteban? Did I pass the test, Sergeant? Don't get cocky on me, rookie. Every day you're on the street, you'll be tested. You start independent patrol next week, and I want you to survive it. And Thorpe, I think you're going to work out okay. Melody Jordan found Campbell Lawrence in the small lab inside the Indian Arts Research Center. Thanks for seeing me on such short notice. You caught me at a good time. Show me what you got. Melody handed Campbell the X-ray envelope and started placing the bones on an examination table. Finished, she turned to find him studying the X-rays on a wall-mounted fluoroscope. While Campbell concentrated on the X-rays, Melody looked him over. A good-looking man in his mid-30s, he turned his attention to the unusual arm bone, his gray eyes piercing. He was, Melody thought, very attractive. This break is old. I'd say it happened in childhood and wasn't properly immobilized after the bone was set. That's highly unusual, Doctor. Only if you're applying Western standards of medicine. I think the injury was treated as a break, not a fracture. Whoever did it may not have had access to any equipment or facilities. It may not have been treated by a physician. I would imagine the victim probably had some chronic pain as a consequence. With impaired mobility of the arm? Possibly. But what interests me most is a slight deformity at the joint end. That's not from getting hacked up. I'd say your victim had rickets as a young child. Any guesses on gender or race? A female, certainly. As for race, it can't be anything more than speculation, but from what I've seen, I'd say this young woman was of mixed race. Hispano-Indian, probably, from the southern part of Mexico or Central America. She suffered from poor nutrition, vitamin deficiency, and woefully inadequate medical care. That's very helpful, Doctor. Please, it's Campbell. Are you and your family enjoying your time in Santa Fe? I'm divorced. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'm fully recovered. Melody Jordan treated him to a 1,000-watt smile. Post office records showed that a second individual, Isaac Medina, received mail at San Esteban's rural delivery address. Gabe stopped at the first occupied house in San Geronimo and asked the elderly woman who came to the door for directions. The woman pointed out a dwelling on a small hill behind her house. A pickup truck was parked in front of the house and smoke drifted from the chimney. Isaac lives there, but Joaquin San Esteban moved away some time ago. You have to go through the village to get to Isaac's driveway. Turn right at the old store. You'll see his gate halfway up the hill. Gabe called in his location before he entered Medina's driveway and drove towards the house slowly, scanning it as he approached. No one was in sight. He parked and waited a minute before getting out of his vehicle. The dwelling had a slanted tin roof that covered an enclosed porch with a row of waist-high windows. He knocked hard at the porch door and called out. A stocky, unshaven man with gray hair stepped out of the house and opened the porch door. Gabe showed his shield and ID. Isaac Medina? What do you want? I'm looking for Joaquin. He doesn't live with me anymore. Can you tell me where to find him? Is he in trouble? No. I want to talk to him about his truck. He told me he wasn't going to report the accident to the police because his insurance rate would go up. Come, I'll show you. Gabe followed Medina to the back of the house where a 3/4-ton Chevy truck with a caved-in front end and smashed windshield was parked. Gabe walked around the vehicle. No winch, no hydraulic lift in the bed, no wrought iron side rails, and the truck was gray in color, not dark blue. Mr. Medina, what did Joaquin tell you about the accident? He didn't have to tell me nothing. I was with him. We hit a deer. See for yourself. There's still blood, skin, and fur on the grill and bumper. Gabe looked and saw blood splatter, flakes of hide, and small strands of fur embedded in the grill. Where's the license plate? Joaquin took it off the truck. How can I contact Joaquin? You're not here about the accident? His license plate was reported by a witness to a crime. Joaquin is no criminal. What kind of crime? Wood poaching. He doesn't need to steal wood from anybody. His father, Philip, owns the biggest wood lot in the county, Buena Vista Lumber and Supply. You know that for a fact? Sure I do. I'm his uncle. His mother is my sister. Why was Joaquin living with you? He was separated from his wife for almost a year. Now they're back together. What's his wife's name? Debbie. Is she one of the Romero girls? No. Her maiden name was Espinosa. Where can I find Joaquin? He works at the wood lot for his father. Thanks, Mr. Medina. Gabe was quite sure that Medina would be on the phone to his nephew as soon as he drove away. At mid-morning, the U.S. attorney called Kerney from Albuquerque. She wanted a face-to-face afternoon meeting on a joint task force bribery and conspiracy operation. There was no way Kerney could refuse. He hung up, called Sarah, explained the situation, and told her their camping trip would have to be delayed. There's no need to apologize, Kerney. We'll simply do it some other time. Okay, I should be home early in the evening. There was a long pause before Sarah responded. This conversation is starting to sound much too domestic. What does that mean, Sarah? Nothing. Am I missing something here? Everything's fine. It doesn't sound that way to me. Stop it, Kerney. I'll see you when you get off work. Kerney hung up the receiver, wondering what in the hell was going on. He waited a minute, dialed his home number again, and got a busy signal. In 5 minutes, he would be taking a top priority phone call. There wasn't time to brood over Sarah. Buena Vista Lumber and Supply contained hundreds of cords of dry and green split firewood and virtually every type of fencing material imaginable. Gabe found Joaquin San Esteban inside the office trailer, giving a telephone quote to a customer. On the desk was a framed photograph of a young, pretty Hispanic woman. San Esteban finished the call and turned to Gabe. "What can I do for you?" Gabe showed San Esteban his credentials. "I'm looking for a woodcutter who drives a dark blue 3/4-ton Chevy with a winch in the front bumper, side rails, and a hydraulic lift in the bed. I see trucks like that in and out of here all the time. Do you have a name?" "Rudy." "That's it?" "That's it." Gabe showed San Esteban the composite drawing. "Does your father have an employee named Rudy?" "No. Nobody who looks like that worked for us." "What did you do with the license plate from the truck you left at your uncle's place?" "We've got a wall of old license plates in the storage building. I added it to the collection. It's been there for months." "Want to see it?" Gabe nodded and followed Joaquin out to the large metal building. The license plate collection ran the length and width of 2 frame walls of a corner office. It included plates from the 1930s right up to the present in chronological order. San Esteban pointed to his plate. "It's right there. The tag doesn't even expire until August." "Thanks for your time, Mr. San Esteban." Gabe left, parked down the road where he could see traffic leaving the woodlot, and tried to figure out what in the hell was bothering him. It was something about the photograph of San Esteban's wife and her maiden name. Isaac Medina had said it was Debbie Espinosa. Shit, he knew the Espinosa family, he thought to himself. He pulled out the composite drawing and studied it. It was Debbie Espinosa's brother, Rudy. He called dispatch and requested communication on Channel 2. It was a secure broadcast frequency not picked up by police scanners. "Run a check on Rudy Espinosa. Keep it local. I busted him about 4 years ago for driving under the influence." After a long wait, the dispatcher came back on the air. "He's done 6 months probation for a second DWI in June and last year. Since then, he was booked and released this past summer for lack of evidence on a San Geronimo breaking and entering charge." "What was he driving last June?" "A 1994 Chevy 3/4-ton pickup, blue in color." "Got a plate number and an address?" Gabe took down the information, signed off, and made contact with Duran, Haug, and Morphin on Channel 2 as he pulled onto the highway and started rolling towards the interstate. "I got a possible suspect in the Boaz murder." He hit the switch to the overhead lights and floored the unit. "Rudy Espinosa. He matches the information supplied to us by Boaz's ex-girlfriend and son. So does the vehicle. I may have tipped my hat." Haug came over the frequency. "Is he running?" "Could be. Look for a dark blue truck with license." Gabe gave the particulars of Rudy's truck and plate number. Morphin asked where Rudy might be headed for. "Ojitos Frios. ID any other moving vehicles that look suspicious. Espinosa is to be considered armed and dangerous." Ben Morphin topped the hill onto Ojitos Frios and saw a car throwing up a dust cloud on the county road at the far end of the valley. "Someone's coming your way, Sergeant. I'm too far back to ID it, but he's moving fast." A new voice, that of Captain Garduno, came on. "I'm along for the ride, Sergeant, and I'm in your tail." "Block the road behind me, sir." "Roger." Ben Morphin called in again. "We got a tan Mustang, Sergeant. Can't read the plate. He's spewing up so much dust you can't see me. I got him clocked at 75. Lights and sirens, Ben. See if he stumps it." "He just goosed it." "Fall back and give him some slack." Gabe swung his vehicle into the center of the road where the shoulders fell off sharply and unracked his shotgun. He put one round in the chamber, got out of the unit, and walked to a tree 20 feet off the shoulder of the road. He could see the dust spreading into the canopy of the trees and could hear the harsh sound of Morphin's siren closing in. The Mustang tore into view, suspension bucking over the washboard road. Gabe watched as the driver stood on the brakes, overcorrected his steering, went into a skid that spun the vehicle like a top, and put it nose first into the deep shoulder. He could hear the hiss of radiator steam and the squeal of metal as the driver opened the car door. Through the dust, 2 hands emerged and grasped the roof of the car. Legs followed, feet found the ground, and Rudy Espinosa pulled himself out of the Mustang. The lights from Ben Morfin's unit cut through the haze 20 feet down the road. Ben was crouched behind the open door of his unit with his weapon at the ready. Gabe raised his shotgun to his shoulder. "Rudy, walk towards me with your hands over your head. Do it now." Hands raised, Espinosa moved sluggishly up the embankment and reached the middle of the road. "Stop! Lock your hands at the back of your head and drop slowly to your knees. Do it now." Espinosa sank to his knees and started to lower his hands. "Hands up, now!" "I can't. Something is wrong with my head." He raised his left hand and fell face down on the ground with his right arm concealed under his body. "Bring your right hand out where I can see it." Rudy didn't move. "Do it!" Rudy rose to his knees and pulled out a pistol. "Kiss my ass!" Morfin hollered, "Gun!" as Gabe pulled the trigger. Rudy jerked back on his heels and fell forward on his face. Gabe racked another shell into the chamber while Morfin circled behind Rudy, kicked the pistol away, and checked the body. "He's dead." After hanging up on Kerney, Sarah tried without success to reach Susie Hayes at her home. Susie, her best friend at West Point, was now a civilian living in Tucson. Sarah chided herself for acting like such a brainless schoolgirl with Kerney. Where did all her silliness come from? She'd never intended to come to Santa Fe and talk about babies and keeping a stud book. Kerney seemed to take it all in jest, which was almost as troubling. He was the only man she'd ever mentioned the possibility of making babies with, and she wondered if he'd caught her serious undertone. But did she really want a baby? Did she really want Kerney to be the man in her life? She decided to ease up on herself. She needed to decompress and get the last 2 years behind her. Her virtual isolation in South Korea, immersed in a male-dominated combat-ready unit, had taken its toll. The rewards had been satisfying, but sublimating almost every feminine feeling had been more emotionally expensive than she'd realized. Maybe being with a sexy man after so long without any healthy lovemaking had opened up her hormonal floodgates, and her confusion was nothing other than a readjustment to a more normal life. Feeling less unsettled, she looked up Susie's work number in her address book and dialed. When Susie answered, Sarah told her a fraction of what was going on inside her head and asked if she could come for a visit. "Get your butt down here, girl. We got some serious talking to do." Word of the Espinosa shooting cut short Kerney's meeting with the U.S. Attorney in Albuquerque. He made the 120-mile drive to Las Vegas in good time, using his radio to stay updated on the situation. 3 hours after the shooting, no evidence had been developed linking Espinosa to the Boaz murder. No Chevy truck, no murder weapon, and no matching fingerprints. A large number of police vehicles were parked in front of the district office, including a crime scene van and the unmarked unit assigned to the headquarters shooting team supervisor, who was responsible for investigating all deadly force incidents. Kerney killed the engine and gave himself a minute to push down his worry about Sarah. She wasn't one to pout or get testy about trivial matters, and she knew firsthand that the demands of police work often screwed up a personal life. He shrugged off his anxiety and walked into the building where a dozen or so officers filled the reception area. In a corner of the room, Officer Thorpe sat with a petite, attractive Hispanic woman dressed in jeans, a sweater, and hiking boots. As he crossed to the reception desk, Thorpe approached him. "Chief, Professor Pino over there found a rare cactus on your property. It really has her pumped, and she'd like to speak with you." "Can she wait?" "I think so. I told her you might be busy for a while." "Good enough." Kerney smiled at the woman as he passed by, wondering what was going on. He filed the thought as he went into Captain Garduno's office to go over the details of the recent shooting. Both Gonzalez and Morfin would be treated as murder suspects until cleared of the charges by the DA and a grand jury. Only a finding of justified homicide in the death of Rudy Espinosa would allow the officers to remain with the department. If the shooting wasn't legal, both faced the possibility of felony convictions and prison time. "Has Espinosa been positively made as Boaz's killer, Captain?" Not yet, Chief, but Wanda Knox identified Espinosa from the mugshot we faxed to the Arcadia PD. The call just came in. So, for now, we've got a dead suspect whose only known crimes were trespassing on private property, illegal woodcutting, and speeding. It was a justifiable use of deadly force, Chief. Espinosa pulled a gun on Gonzalez. I'm not questioning that, Captain, but the press could decide to hound us until we have clear proof that Espinosa was a murderer, and not some petty crook who got gunned down by an overly aggressive state police officer during a routine traffic stop. Chief, I promise you we'll find the evidence. Where is Gonzalez now? Sequestered in the conference room. Kerney found Gabe Gonzalez tapping his fingers on the conference table. How you holding up, Sergeant? I've seen a lot of dead people over the years, but this is the first time I ever had to put somebody down. Are you all right with it? I will be. I know it was a clean shooting. How far did you get before the shooting team pulled you in for a statement? Not very. Angie Romero, Espinosa's girlfriend, swears the only vehicle Rudy normally drove was a Toyota pickup parked in her driveway. Is she playing it straight? Who knows? She drinks her breakfast straight out of a whiskey bottle. Ben Morfin searched the truck and found nothing. I'm pretty sure Espinosa's brother-in-law, Joaquin Santisteban, tipped him that he was about to get busted. Otherwise, Espinosa had no reason to run. But the phone company has no record of a call made from the woodyard to Espinosa, or from Angie's house to Santisteban. Frank Haug is checking with cellular providers now. We need to find that Chevy truck, Sergeant, and the murder weapon, Chief. Maybe Haug and Duran will score while I'm cooling my heels for the next 3 days. That's not going to happen. They're both reassigned to another case effective tomorrow. May I make a suggestion? You need a couple of days out in the fresh air. Meet some new people, take scenic drives, poke around and explore. It's a pretty time of year. Am I hearing you right, Chief? It's your call, Sergeant. I can't order you to violate department policy. Who would I report to? Kerney handed Gonzalez his business card. On the back, you'll find my private office and home telephone numbers. You report to me alone, no one else. Professor Ruth Pino was a petite, middle-aged Hispanic woman no more than 5'2". She wore blue jeans, hiking boots, and a lightweight sweater that didn't detract from her still youthful figure. Kerney listened as Ruth Pino explained the rarity of the cactus, its value to collectors, and the importance of the discovery of a new habitat on the alluvial apron at the bottom of the mesa. The common name of this plant is Knowlton's cactus. It's on the Federal Biologically Endangered Species list. There is only one known area in northwestern New Mexico where this cactus has ever been found. Ever, Professor? In the world. The Nature Conservancy owns the land. It's on a secret preserve. A secret preserve for cactus? Probably no more than 3,000 plants exist in the wild. It's a variety treasured by collectors. One cactus can bring up to hundreds of dollars depending on its size. The Knowlton cactus has been reduced to near extinction. It's illegal to harvest it. If these truly came from a second site, you've made a very significant discovery. Whoever destroyed the trees along the watershed should be shot. The vehicle tires alone destroyed over 100 plants. I can even begin to estimate how many plants were eradicated during the woodcutting. But some remain. Yes, but heavily threatened. The habitat has been altered, and unless the erosion is stopped, they could be wiped out by the end of the rainy season. Can the cactus be protected? With your cooperation and some very substantial financial resources. Cooperation I can give, Professor, but my resources are fairly limited right now. Tell me how I can help. Give me unlimited access to the site. I'll bring in a team of graduate students from the university. We need to do a thorough mapping, a complete census, and some immediate temporary erosion control. Of course. Once the distribution range has been clearly established, the tract must be fenced and possibly even guarded from poachers. From what I've been told, the woman responsible for the harvesting had no idea the cactus was an endangered plant. That may well be, but Knowlton's cactus was persistently collected in northwestern New Mexico until the Nature Conservancy stepped in and bought the land. European collectors have been known to pay over $200 for a mature plant, sometimes more. Any word of a new discovery will bring out the poachers. They're no different from pot hunters who violate the Federal Antiquities Act. How much fencing will be needed? That's impossible to say at this point. I've had less than a day to conduct a spot field analysis. If other viable distributions are found, each will require protection. Let me know what you come up with, Professor. You will help us save this site, won't you? I can't even promise you that I'll be able to retain ownership of the land, Professor, but I'll do what I can while I can. I see. Would you mind if I brought a few outside experts into the loop? Who might they be? Representatives from organizations who can help me develop a restoration plan for the site. It won't cost you any money. By all means. Ruth Pino assembled her papers and gave Kerney an agreeable smile. I may have to revise my opinion of police officers. Why is that? It seems that not all of them suffer from authoritarian personality disorders. Can you say the same about university professors? On occasion, Chief Kerney. Emotionally and physically drained from the events of the day, Gabe arrived home to find a car parked next to Orlando's subcompact in the driveway. From upstairs he could hear music and the sound of male voices coming from Orlando's room. He wondered who was visiting his son. Gabe got busy preparing the meal, his thoughts turning to his conversation with Chief Kerney. Having the chief's permission to continue to work the case might not mean squat in the final analysis. He could still get written up for violating departmental policies. That would surely torpedo his chances for promotion. It wasn't a pleasant thought. But the important issue was getting Orlando through his degree program at the university and successfully launched. If he had to remain a patrol sergeant and continue to pinch pennies to do it, so be it. He heard footsteps on the stairs and turned to find Orlando and Bernardo Barella, Nestor's grandson, standing in the doorway. How are you, Bernardo? Fine, Mr. Gonzalez. Bernardo flashed a smile that struck Gabe as smug and insolent. I haven't seen you for a while, Bernardo. Still working for your grandfather? Yeah, I'm out at the new ranch. Orlando, are you two heading out? Yeah, Dad. We'll grab a burger and a beer somewhere. Want me to bring you back a burger? No thanks. It's grilled cheese and soup for me. You boys have a good time. Orlando and Bernardo had been friends ever since they'd played varsity baseball in high school. Gabe hadn't seen much of Bernardo over the last year, and Orlando hadn't said anything about a falling out. He hadn't asked any questions about Bernardo's absence and Orlando's social life, but he'd been glad when the relationship seemed to fade. Bernardo had always made Gabe a little uneasy with his macho attitude and tough guy posturing. Shu met Kerney at the door, tail wagging with a sneaker clamped in his teeth. He scratched the dog's ear and found Sarah in the bedroom packing her suitcase. She looked up and gave him a vague smile. I'm glad you got here before I left. Where are you going? Tucson to visit an old friend. Are you all right? Fine. I know I sounded bitchy on the telephone. It had nothing to do with you. What was it about? It's not something I want to get into right now. Did I say something, do something? It's not you, Kerney. I have some thinking to do. Just call it bad timing on my part. I never should have barged in on you unannounced. I'm glad you did. Well, it's been fun. And I'm sorry about leaving this way. Maybe we should talk this out. I do need some talk, Kerney. Good old-fashioned girl talk. That's why I'm going to Tucson. Are you coming back? I'll see you and Shu soon. Kerney watched Sarah load her bag in the Jeep and drive away. He hoped she was leveling with him and that her sudden departure wasn't prompted by something he'd done. The thought didn't relieve the hollow feeling in his gut. Orlando Gonzalez sat at a table by the window of the Rough Rider bar. He took a pull on the long-neck beer and stared at Bernardo. You wanted to talk. What about? We need to catch up, mano. I thought the plan was we weren't going to hang together anymore. Did you read the story in the newspapers about the bones the cops found on the mesa? Jesus, was that her? Part of her. I spread the body around. Some parts here, some parts there. The cops will never be able to ID her. You cut her up? Yeah. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you couldn't handle it. We just should have let her go. Yeah, straight to the police. Listen, we both raped her. I know that. But you killed her. In the eyes of the law, both of us did. Just keep me posted on what your old man and the other cops are doing with the case. Is that what you wanted to talk to me about? You can't be serious. I am. We don't need any surprises. Bernardo, is there any way you can be connected to the girl? Chill, Boto. I met her one time, that's all. I already told you that. Orlando thought back to the night they'd picked her up. He'd been too drunk to remember anything clearly, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Bernardo's version of how he talked Luisa into the truck was a little screwy. You're sure? Why would I lie about that? Relax, dude. Drink up. Relax shit. I feel like puking. It doesn't bother you, does it? Not really. I can't make it go away. Neither can you. I'll take you home, Mano. You're no fun to drink with anymore anyway. Bernardo pulled into Orlando's driveway. Mano, you call me if you learn anything. Orlando nodded sharply and walked towards the house. Bernardo drove away thinking he'd made a mistake asking Orlando to check out what the cops were doing with the investigation. It had just shaken him up and bummed him out. He wondered if Orlando might crack under the strain. He thought back to the night of the murder. They'd been cruising together in his grandfather's truck, drinking beers and shooting the shit, both with a major buzz going, when Bernardo saw Luisa walking along the road from Ojitos Frios. It had been Bernardo's idea to pick her up and screw her. Orlando was too drunk to argue, too drunk to care. He passed out just before Bernardo turned the truck around and went back to get her. He pulled up alongside her with his pistol in hand and told her if she didn't get in, he'd kill her. She didn't resist or argue. After finding a secluded spot away from the road, Bernardo waited until Orlando came to and gave him first crack at Luisa. Still drunk, it didn't take him long to finish. And when he crawled away to puke his guts out, Bernardo took his turn. Luisa held herself rigid while he fucked her, eyes filled with hate, and Bernardo knew he was going to kill her. When it was over, he pinned her to the ground and smashed her skull with a rock. He wrapped her body in a tarp and went to Orlando, who was sitting under a tree, his eyes wide with disbelief. You killed her. She was going to turn us in for rape. You said she wanted to get it on with us. She changed her mind. What are we going to do? I'll take care of it, Mano. And Bernardo did. After taking Orlando home, he returned, cut up the corpse like he was butchering a steer, and hid part of the body on the mesa and the rest in an arroyo 20 miles away. Then he washed out the bed of the truck and got home before anyone was up. Bernardo had lied to Orlando about not knowing Luisa. He had met her when she came up from Mexico to work as a housekeeper at the Box Z ranch. Luisa had been a complete turn-on, a great-looking piece of ass with a tight body, full tits, a small waist, long black hair, and shy dark eyes. He put some moves on her that Luisa had brushed off, treating him like some little kid. When she changed jobs and started working at the Horse Canyon Ranch, Bernardo couldn't stop thinking about her. He would see her occasionally, but she'd have nothing to do with him. Once he'd offer her a ride when she was walking along the county road, but she just blew him off and kept walking, making him feel like a fool. After that, Bernardo started to think of ways to teach the dick-teasing bitch a lesson. Raping and killing Luisa had been a spur-of-the-moment thing, but it opened up a whole new world for Bernardo. If his luck held and the cops couldn't identify Luisa's remains, the next time he would plan things more carefully. He had just the girl picked out. The image of Jessica Varela, the gringo chick with the Spanish name who worked at the hardware store, popped into his mind, and a pleasant feeling of anticipation ran through him. He pushed the image aside and thought about Orlando. He could ruin everything, and Bernardo wasn't about to let that happen. In his room, Orlando tried to convince himself that Bernardo was right and there was nothing to worry about. But ever since the rape and the murder, Orlando knew he would be caught and sent to prison, maybe even executed. For a year, he'd kept trying to pretend it had never happened, but talking with Bernardo tonight had brought it all back like a hammer inside his head. It had been Bernardo's idea to see if Luisa wanted to get it on. If Orlando hadn't been drunk, he would never have done it. But a lame excuse didn't count for shit. What could he say? That he didn't mean for it to happen? That he never wanted to see her hurt or killed? Lame. He'd thought a lot about suicide, but he didn't have the balls for it. Time and again he thought about telling his father, and he didn't have the balls for that either. If he could hold on for just a little more than a year, he would have his degree and then he could split. Get away from it all and go somewhere new. Put this shit behind him. After an uneasy night with little sleep, Kerney phoned an air freight company that could ship Shu from Santa Fe and deliver him to Lane Knox. With Sarah gone, he didn't like the idea of sending Shu away. It would just make him feel all the more gloomy. He packed Shoe's sneaker and all the pet necessities, leashed the dog, drove to the air freight office where Kerney paid the charges and the freight agent put Shoe in the cage. Shoe gave Kerney a sad look as the freight agent took him away. Kerney almost called the man back, knowing he would miss that dog. At his office, he pulled the Mesa murder file and read it through in detail. Melody Jordan had updated her report with the findings from her meeting with Dr. Lawrence. Lawrence's assessment wasn't hard evidence, but narrowing the possibility that the murder victim might be either Central American or Mexican national could prove helpful. The work Frank Haug had done was inconclusive. None of the 3 missing women who matched the victim's age had suffered an old fracture. Kerney skimmed the missing persons printout from the National Crime Information Center, came up empty on any matches, and decided it was time to get out and do some old-fashioned legwork. Gabe reviewed the background checks on Nestor Barella and his family that had been requested by Chief Kerney. Nestor's 3 sons, Rocky, Lalo, and Elias, all had clean slates. The only grandchildren, Bernardo and Gerald, offspring of Nestor's youngest son Elias, and Rocky's 3 girls, still lived at home. Gerald worked in the business office at a regional vocational school and was engaged to be married in June. Bernardo worked with his uncle Rocky on the family ranch. None of the information about the Barellas surprised Gabe. He'd grown up with Elias Barella and knew the family fairly well. Nestor's truck was parked in front of his house, but there wasn't an answer when Gabe knocked at the door. He turned the corner of the house, saw 3 men leading saddled horses from the barn to a stock trailer, and walked down to meet them. When he got close, he recognized Nestor, Rocky, and Bernardo. He nodded a greeting to Bernardo. "Did you have a good time with Orlando last night?" "Yeah, we drank a few beers and hung out for a while." Gabe shook Rocky's hand. "Working hard, Roque?" "Always. My father treats us like peons." Nestor laughed as he eyed Gabe's civilian attire. "What brings the state police to see us?" "To ask a few questions. Did you know Carl Boaz?" "I didn't even know his name until I read it in the paper." "How about Rudy Espinosa?" Rocky answered for his father. "We all knew Rudy. He was nothing but trouble. There are rumors that he was breaking into some of the summer homes in the valley." "Did he cause you any?" "Not personally. Rudy just drank a lot and couldn't keep a job. I heard he got fired from Horse Canyon Ranch." "When?" "About a year ago. He worked there a short time." "Do you know why he got canned?" "I have no idea. Emmett Griffin, the ranch manager, can tell you." Gabe turned to Bernardo. "Did you ever see him driving a 3/4-ton dark blue Chevy long bed?" "If I did, I don't remember it." "Do you think Rudy killed the woman you found on the mesa?" "I don't know. It's an interesting theory." "Do you know who Rudy hung out with?" "Not me." Gabe thanked the men for their help and left. Situated in the foothills, Susie's Tucson townhouse had excellent views of the mountains to the east and the city below. She got Sarah settled on the couch and sat next to her. "Now, tell me about this cop you're in love with. I never said anything about being in love." Susie ran her hand through her chestnut hair and stifled a laugh. "What does that mean, Susie?" "Oh, do you talk about having a baby with every man you sleep with?" "I like him a lot." Susie put her feet on the cushions and wrapped her arms around her knees. "Let's have it, Sarah, and I mean full disclosure. We've got all day, tonight, and tomorrow if needed." Connecting the dots between Rudy Espinosa and Joaquin San Esteban proved more difficult than Gabe expected. He'd assumed that the phone company would be able to verify a call from the woodlot to Angie Romero's residence about the time Gabe had left, but no such call was made. Gabe tried the cellular providers, hoping either Rudy or Joaquin were customers with one of the companies. He came up empty with the local companies, worked the out-of-town providers, and struck out again. The exercise took him the better part of the morning. He left the house wondering how in the hell Joaquin had gotten in touch with Rudy. Without confirmation that Joaquin had tipped Espinosa, Gabe didn't want to make any premature moves. He decided to stake out Buena Vista Lumber and Supply to see if Joaquin left the office for lunch. If so, he would do a little snooping and talk to the employees. He found a good spot where he wouldn't be noticed and settled down to wait. The lunch hour came and went, and Gabe was about to call it off when San Esteban's truck appeared and turned onto the highway traveling south. Gabe wondered where Joaquin was headed. There wasn't much along the state road for a good 30-odd miles, certainly no place to grab a quick lunch. It occurred to Gabe that he should work a girlfriend angle. He drove onto the lot half expecting to be recognized, but the two employees on duty were not people he knew. He parked and made a show of inspecting fencing materials before wandering over to the worker bagging chips, where the odor of fresh-cut green pinon wood greeted him. "You need some help?" "Not really." "Do you sell those chips or give it away?" "Sell it. Texans buy it to use in their fireplaces. They don't have much pinon to burn and they like the smell of it. Put a few chips in with the logs, it gives a nice aroma." "You're kidding." "It's true. A trucker hauls 3 or 4 semi-loads a year to Lubbock, Amarillo, even Dallas." "A local trucker?" "Yeah. Lenny Alarid from Anton Chico does the hauling." "By the way, how well did you know Rudy Espinosa?" "What's it to you?" "Rudy's family isn't happy with what happened. I'm looking into it." "Wasn't that something?" "Yeah, I knew Rudy. He worked here for a while until the boss fired him." "Joaquin?" "No, Philip. Rudy had sticky fingers." "He was stealing?" "Yeah, little crap. Hand tools, fence posts, partial rolls of leftover wire, stuff like that." "Who did he hang with?" "Nobody really. Joaquin a little bit, you know, the brother-in-law thing." "Do you remember the truck he drove?" "A beat-up Toyota, piece of shit." "Nothing else?" "That's all I ever saw him in." "Is Rudy's family gonna hire a lawyer and sue the shit out of the cops for shooting Rudy?" "Possibly. Nobody should get wasted for just being a thief." Kerney did a house-to-house canvass of San Geronimo and the surrounding countryside, asking questions about a young Mexican woman who had either lived or worked in the area. Not surprisingly, no one recalled a woman who matched the description Kerney had compiled from the information supplied by Melody Jordan's analysis. Emmett Griffin opened the door to the Horse Canyon Ranch foreman's residence. Kerney displayed his shield, identified himself, and asked for a few minutes. Griffin motioned for Kerney to enter. "I thought you might be a cop." "What gave me away?" "I used to talk the talk and walk the walk. Spent 5 years as a deputy sheriff in Texas before deciding working with animals was a hell of a lot safer. One of your officers stopped by earlier, Sergeant Gonzalez. He was asking about Rudy Espinosa." "What did you tell him?" "That I had to let him go because he wasn't worth a damn. About a week after he started, we began losing things. When a couple of good saddles turned up gone, I fired him." "Did he admit to taking the saddles?" "No." "Did you report it to the sheriff's office?" "A lot of good that did. The deputy came out and took a report. End of story." "Did you ever actually catch Espinosa stealing?" "Nope. But I knew the rest of my crew wasn't doing it. They've been with me since I moved over to this job." "Where were you working before?" "The Box Z down on the Conchas River." "Did Espinosa cause any other problems?" "Not with me." "With somebody else?" "The housekeeper didn't like him. He kept pestering her. She complained to the boss." "What was it doing?" "Making excuses to go up to the house, trying to get alone with her. At least that's what she said. He wasn't the only one to show interest in her. Louisa attracted men. Cute little thing. Real purty in a shy sort of way." "Can you describe her?" "She was about 5'4", in her mid-20s, dark hair, dark skin. Her left arm was skinnier than her right arm. She said she broke it when she was a kid." "Do you know her full name?" "Luisa San Miguel was her Spanish name, but she was mostly Injun." "You talk about her in the past tense." "Yeah, she quit and went home to Mexico. She was from somewhere in Chiapas, the southernmost state on the border with Guatemala." "You knew her fairly well?" "Not really, but my old boss at the Box Z gave her a good recommendation when she came to work here." "Did you work with her at the Box Z?" "Nope. She didn't start there till after I left." "When did she quit working here?" "Soon after I fired Espinosa, sometime in April last year." "Did she give a reason for leaving?" "Not to me. Maybe the boss knows." "Where is your boss?" "Santa Fe. Won't be back until late tonight." "What about tomorrow?" "She'll be here all day as far as I know. I can't say I liked Rudy much, but I sure didn't wish him dead." Sarah woke to find herself on Susie's couch and Susie in the kitchen stirring a pot of pasta. What time is it? Almost dinner time. Welcome back to the living. When did I fall asleep? About 3 o'clock this afternoon, right in mid-sentence. What were we talking about before I lost it? Your extraordinary discovery of an honest man. If you decide you don't want Kerney, would you arrange an introduction for me? He sounds that good, does he? He sounds yummy. Susie put a bowl of salad on the table. Tonight's menu is store-bought spaghetti sauce, frozen green beans, and salad with bottled dressing. However, I did cook the pasta to perfection. You're quite domestic. That's not where my charm lies, nor yours. Do you really think you can't be a career officer, mother, and a wife? I could handle 2 out of 3 fairly well. So, which one goes by the boards? I haven't a clue. Why not have it all? I don't think Kerney would be willing to follow me around from post to post for the next 10 years. Besides, neither of us discussed getting married. Maybe you haven't mentioned the M word to him, but you've come close, with all that talk of a stud book and getting pregnant. I guess I have, but I'm not the wife type. You're sure of that? I don't know if I'm sure of anything anymore. That's promising. You think so? Do you care for Kerney? I feel more connected to him than any man I've ever known. Jesus, Sarah, listen to yourself. I guess I'm confused. Finally, we're getting somewhere. Eat your dinner. Dinner time had come and gone, and by now Ruth Pino's ever-tolerant husband had their 2 boys bathed and ready for bed. She reached for her address book and dialed Reese Carson's home telephone in Santa Fe. Reese handled all the land protection programs for the New Mexico Nature Conservancy. Reese, Ruth Pino, I thought you might like to come up to Las Vegas tomorrow for the day. Is this another last-minute plea to get me to lecture to your undergraduates? No. I found something I think you might like to see. Don't keep me hanging, Ruth. Tell me what you've got that would be worth my time. Knowlton's cactus. You're joking. Outside San Geronimo. You're serious. Completely. Jesus, do you know what you've got? You bet I do. A full day of field work hadn't gotten Gabe anywhere. He had half a mind to confront Joaquin Santisteban directly and put the squeeze on him about Rudy Espinosa. What held Gabe back was a nagging idea that Boaz hadn't been killed simply to cover up the wood theft. As he walked into the kitchen, he discovered Orlando looking through his open briefcase. What are you doing? Orlando closed the briefcase and turned to face his father. Nothing. You know better than to mess with my stuff. Sorry, I was just what? Interested, that's all. You shot Rudy Espinosa. Don't you dare tell anyone about that. People are already saying you did it. Are you going to lose your job? No. You could retire. Not while you're in school. I've been thinking about transferring to another school for my senior year. Why? You've just got a little more than a year until you graduate. I'm bored. The classes are too easy. There's no challenge. For Christ's sakes, you're on the dean's list. Where would you go? Albuquerque. And live with your mother? Maybe. Have you talked to her about it? Not yet. Will all your credits transfer? I don't know. I just know I'm bored with school here and sick of living in Las Vegas. You're over 21, and I can't make you stay, but I think it's a dumb move at this stage. I'm not asking for your advice or help. I plan to do it on my own. Do what you think is best. But let's talk about this again later, okay? You wouldn't be pissed at me? No, but I'll miss you if you leave. Kerney's apartment felt cold and looked dingy. He roamed around restlessly, tidying things up, trying not to think about Sarah. But that was impossible. Seeing Sarah had made him want more than a crummy place and an empty bed to sleep in. Sarah lit him up inside, and he didn't want to lose her or that feeling. He was half asleep on the couch when the telephone rang. He grabbed for it, hoping it was Sarah. It was Dale. Are you awake, pal? More or less. I've been thinking about that partnership idea. I'd really like to do it. I don't see how it can happen. I'd have to pay $6 million in taxes to do it. Well, you don't sound very enthusiastic about just the idea. I've been distracted lately. The murder case? That and Sarah. She showed up at my door Sunday night. Whew, no wonder you're distracted. Is she there? Let me talk to her. She's come and gone. What happened? Damned if I know. I thought everything was going great, then she just up and left. Did you two argue? No, she just took off to visit a girlfriend in Tucson. Said she had some thinking to do. What about? I don't have a clue. You sound pretty low. I guess I am. I miss her, Dale. No woman has ever meant as much to me. I've been waiting a long time to hear you say that. You need a woman in your life, Kerney, and Sarah's the cream of the crop. What should I do? Write it out. She probably just needs some breathing room. Women are like that. I hope so. Kerney hung up, hoping he could push Sarah out of his mind and get a few hours' sleep. Kerney arrived at Horse Canyon Ranch as the morning sun washed the deep purple off the mountains. He eyed the headquarters as he drove down the paved ranch road, thinking that sooner or later one of those trendy glossy magazines would undoubtedly feature Alicia Bingham and her marvelous hacienda in an issue on living the good life in northern New Mexico. Alicia Bingham opened the door and studied the man standing under the portal at her front door. Tall, with wide, square shoulders, brown hair touched with gray at the sideburns, and keen, deep blue eyes, he was quite good-looking. She took the business card from his hand and glanced at the police badge held up for her inspection. Griffin said you might be stopping by for a chat. Do come in, Chief Kerney. Kerney stepped inside and followed Alicia Bingham into the living room. Oriental rugs were scattered around the floor, family portraits and photographs filled the walls, and chintz curtains in a spring flower print draped the long windows. Deep sofas and chairs, separated by an oversized ottoman used to hold an array of books and magazines, occupied the space in front of a large fireplace. Somehow, the very English decor blended nicely with the clean lines of the double adobe house. Would you care for some coffee or tea? No, thank you. Kerney made Bingham to be somewhere in her early 40s. Dressed in a gray, striped cashmere sweater and designer blue jeans, she had perfect teeth, wide-set brown eyes, and short, light brown hair that covered her ears. I shouldn't like to rush you, but please ask your questions straight away. I have a very busy morning ahead of me. Emmett Griffith said you might know why Louisa left her position. I am afraid during Louisa's time with us I was frantically engaged in so many different projects I didn't give her very much attention. She gave you no reason for leaving. Homesickness certainly was an issue for her. I don't believe she realized that she would be viewed by the local Hispanics more as an Indian than a Latina. She felt shunned. I would say so. The locals pride themselves on their Spanish heritage. Many view Mexicans with disdain. She made these feelings clear to you. Yes. Louisa spoke passable English. She attended a Baptist missionary school in Chiapas for several years. I was sorry to lose her. She was a very capable housekeeper. Did she complain of any inappropriate attention from any of your male employees? The men flitted around her for a time until I put a stop to it. She was quite an exotic-looking creature. She made no complaints about anyone specifically. She simply asked me to keep the men from interrupting her at work. Was she more agreeable to their attentions on her free time? Insofar as I could tell, no. She rarely left the ranch. Did Louisa leave suddenly? Yes, but that's not uncommon with immigrant workers. They tend to come and go without much warning. Did she have a green card? Yes. I follow the immigration rules carefully, Chief Kerney. As an Englishwoman, I certainly do not wish to violate any American laws that would jeopardize my permanent resident status. Do you have documentation? In my files. Did Louisa leave any personal belongings behind? As a matter of fact, she did. A box of clothing, most of which I had passed along to her. We were almost the same size. I still had them stored in the garage. I expected she would write to have the box sent along by post, but I've never heard from her. I'd like to see the immigration forms for Louisa if it's no bother. I'll get them for you. Alicia rose, left the room, and returned with a slim folder. Kerney read through it quickly. It looked to be in order. May I borrow this for a day or two? Yes. Now, Chief Kerney, you must tell me something. What is this interest you have in Louisa? She may have been raped and murdered. May have been? Yes, we're still trying to identify a victim. Is this about the skeleton that was found last weekend? Yes. I do hope your assumption about Louisa is wrong. It's chilling just to think about it. Do you have a photograph of Louisa? No, I don't think so. On second thought, perhaps I do. Not a photograph, actually. Come along with me. She led Kerney out of the conservatory. through the living room and into a media room equipped with comfortable chairs for a dozen people, a large screen television, and expensive video camera equipment. We videotape our horses as part of the training program. Sometimes Louisa would watch. I believe there are 1 or 2 tapes that show her clearly. She searched through the cassettes, pulled one out, put it in the playback machine, and turned on the TV. Yes, this is the one. Alicia fast-forwarded through a dressage exercise with a gray gelding, then returned to normal speed. Louisa quickly came into view as a rider finished and turned the horse towards the paddock gate. Alicia froze the frame. Quite a lovely face. Kerney nodded in agreement. Louisa had long, jet-black hair, thick eyelashes, and delicate, almost Eurasian features. From the neck down, her figure was full, with a tiny waist and wide, inviting hips. "May I borrow the tape?" She popped it out of the machine and handed it to Kerney. "And now, I must fly." She escorted Kerney to his vehicle, where he saw Emmett Griffin wander out of the horse barn. Kerney joined him. "Mr. Griffin, did Louisa give notice before she quit?" "Nope, she just left." "How did she leave?" "She walked away." "Didn't you think that was unusual?" "Not at the time. She didn't know how to drive, and most evenings if the weather was nice she'd go for a walk. She liked to walk." "Was she carrying anything when she left?" "Not that I noticed." "Where would she walk to?" "Mostly down to Ojitos Frios." "Was she visiting somebody in the village?" "I don't know." "How was she dressed that evening?" "Jeans, some sort of top, I think. That was usually what she wore." "Did she ever hitch rides?" "Only with people she knew from the ranch." "You sure of that?" "Yeah. Couple of times I'd be on the road and see some guy in front of me trying to pick her up. She'd wave him off." "What exactly did she say to you before she left?" "That she was going home. At the time I didn't think she meant right that minute." "Who was here at the ranch that day?" "Me, my crew, and Richard, the boss's son. The boss was in Los Angeles that week. Richard brought a friend from college with him for the weekend, a girl." "Tell me about Richard." "He goes to college down in Santa Fe. He comes up on weekends when school is out and during summer vacations. He's 20. Good kid." "Did Richard ever come on to Louisa?" "Richard doesn't like girls that way, if you get my drift." "When did Richard and his friend leave?" "Soon after Louisa did." "What was his friend's name?" "Nancy something." "Does Richard live on campus?" "No, Alicia bought him a condo in Santa Fe." "Do you have the address?" "Yeah, but I'd rather you got that information from the boss. I'm sure she won't mind telling you." Richard Bingham lived in a studio condominium of no more than 800 square feet. Yet, given its location in downtown Santa Fe, Kerney figured it was worth a pretty penny. The young man weighed in at no more than 150 pounds on a 6'2" frame. He had long curly hair that fell over his forehead, and he was trying hard to grow a mustache. He laughed when Kerney questioned him about Louisa. "Didn't Emmett tell you I'm gay?" "It's no secret." "Did anything happen to upset Louisa the day she disappeared?" "Well, Nancy kind of freaked her out." "How so?" "She wanted to get it on with Louisa." "Nancy's gay?" "Yeah, and she can be very butch at times." "She kept grabbing at Louisa and talking sexy to her." "Anything else?" "Louisa slapped her in the kitchen after Nancy grabbed her ass. That chilled Nancy out. Then Louisa split and went to her room." "When did this happen?" "About 3 o'clock in the afternoon." "Did you see Louisa after the incident in the kitchen?" "Not until we left the ranch. She was walking down the side of the road about halfway between the ranch and Romeroville when we passed her." "Going in which direction?" "Toward the interstate." "Did you stop?" "No. After what happened, we didn't think Louisa wanted to talk to either of us." "What time was that?" "It was getting on towards dusk." Emmett Griffin said that Louisa never hitched rides with strangers. "Did you see anyone on the road who might have given her a lift?" "No." "Well, not right away. You know where the pavement ends as you make the turn out of Romeroville heading towards Ojitos Frios?" "I do." "Bernardo Barella passed me in his grandfather's pickup." "Would that be Nestor Barella's grandson?" "Yeah. He had another guy with him. I didn't know him." "Did Bernardo recognize you?" "No. We were Nancy's new Pathfinder. Her father had just bought it for her." "Did Louisa know Bernardo?" "Sure." "Would she have accepted a ride from Bernardo?" "If she wanted to get back to the ranch before dark, she might have. I don't know." "How well do you know Bernardo?" "Not well. He stops by the ranch every now and then." Did he ever say anything to you about Louisa? Straight, Hispanic dudes don't tend to talk about women with gay men. He knows you're gay. Everybody knows. It's who I am. Reese Carson rewound his last roll of film and returned his camera to its case. The day had turned windy, and a strong gust coursed down the west slope of the mountains, picked up loose topsoil from the clear-cut area, and spun a dust devil up the side of the mesa. As he turned away, his wispy, baby-fine brown hair fluttered in the wind, and his red-rimmed gray eyes watered. Reese sniffled as he spoke to Ruth Pino. "What a find you have here. It's absolutely amazing. This is the last place I'd look for Knowlton's cactus." "I agree, Reese." Ruth wiped some dust from her own eyes and watched as her graduate students moved slowly across the clear-cut area. The Knowlton's cactus census was complete. Over 8,000 plants had been counted at the two separate sites. But if you compare soil samples, plant life, and elevation to the San Juan County Preserve, it's almost a perfect ecosystem match. You mean it was a match. This site is a disaster waiting to happen, and you could lose the second site you found when the erosion spreads down the valley. We have to move fast, Reese. Spring runoff in the canyon is going to wash away more of the alluvial fan, and summer storms will cut more erosion furrows down from the ridgeline. It will be a double whammy. Reese nodded glumly in agreement. Protecting the site is essential. Slow down, Ruth. This isn't going to happen overnight. Like hell, slow down. We don't even know what the new owner is willing to consider. What can we offer him as an incentive? For now, our assistance. How fast can you move, Reese? I'll get on it right away. Since the land adjoins the National Forest, the feds might be willing to help out. Putting a Band-Aid on this isn't going to solve the problem. I know it. I'll call my chapter board members when I get back to the office, explain the situation, and ask for authorization to begin negotiations with the owner. It shouldn't be a problem. I'll need to borrow your field notes and plant and analysis charts. They're in rough draft form and incomplete. It doesn't matter. After I get the board's permission to move, I'll need to sit down with the owner and find out if he's willing to work with us. He will be. Although Carl Boaz's cabin had been thoroughly tossed during the original search, Gabe felt he'd missed something. If Boaz's journal truly reflected the amount Rudy Espinosa had agreed to pay for access to the woodcutting area, Boaz had settled for chump change. It was hard to believe Boaz had been that stupid. Boaz had put together a sophisticated marijuana production scheme that might have gone undetected if Rudy hadn't blown him away. Beyond that, Gabe still couldn't figure out why Rudy had iced Boaz. Why would Rudy want to kill a conspirator in what amounted to nothing more than a low-grade felony? Assuming Rudy knew about the marijuana cultivation, wouldn't he think Boaz had every reason to keep his mouth shut about the wood poaching? He tore out sections of the cabin walls, shoveled topsoil out of the greenhouse nursery tables, and stripped the interior of the truck down to the metal. He found nothing. Frustrated, Gabe leaned against the front fender of the truck and scanned the meadow and the buildings, waiting for inspiration. What was he missing? He was about to give up when his gaze settled on a gas-powered electric generator installed on a concrete pad halfway between the cabin and the greenhouse. He walked to it and took a closer look. The generator, expensive and fairly new, sat on two long metal runners that were bolted to the pad. He found the manufacturer's plate and a metal tag from an electrical supply company in Lubbock, Texas. Why would Boaz buy a generator from a company hundreds of miles away when he could get the same item locally? He wrote down the information, went to the greenhouse, and climbed on the roof to inspect the bank of solar panels. All of them were tagged by the same Lubbock company. At the water well, he disconnected the power supply, removed the housing cover, pulled up the submersible pump, and found another tag from the Lubbock supply house. In the cabin, Gabe sat at the table and went through Boaz's canceled checks, cash purchase receipts, and lists of expenditures for construction costs he'd checked out of the evidence room. Boaz had kept detailed records of his costs to get the operation up and running. None of the items from Lubbock showed up as purchases. Gabe looked around the cabin. The propane refrigerator and the propane stove looked new. He ran through Boaz's records again and found no documentation for the purchase of either item. Where did Boaz get all this stuff? He pulled the stove and refrigerator away from the wall, wrote down the make, model, and serial numbers, and used his cellular phone to call Russell Thorpe. "I need you to run some information through NCIC. Have you got a pen and paper?" Gabe read off the make, model, and serial number for each item and had Thorpe repeat the information back to him. "How soon do you want this, Sarge?" "ASAP. I'll call you right back." Gabe used the time waiting for Thorpe to call, going over Boaz's journal line by line, looking for anything that might give him an insight into the murder. The phone rang and Gabe answered. "What have you got?" "3 hits, Sarge. The gas-powered generator, solar panels, and the pump were stolen from a Lubbock electrical supply company. The propane refrigerator was boosted from a freight car on a railroad siding in Amarillo, and the propane cooking stove was taken from an appliance store in Midland, Texas. All within the last year, all major heists." In Las Vegas, Kerney stopped at the county sheriff's office and got directions to the Box Z ranch, where Luisa's son Miguel had once been employed. The route took him along a state highway that cut through high rolling plains and onto a narrow 2-lane road that provided a panoramic view of the mountains. 10 miles south, a lone butte towered where the canyon lands ended. Stands of pinon and juniper trees peppered lush pastures filled with blue stem and Indian rice grass. Patches of spring wildflowers threw color against the foot of the mesas. Sheltered at the foot of the butte, the Box Z headquarters was surrounded by groves of cottonwood trees. The man who opened the front door of the main ranch house wore a straw cowboy hat pushed back to reveal a high forehead and eyeglasses with plastic frames. Somewhere in his 60s, he had straight lips beneath a pudgy nose and deep creases in his cheeks that ran down to his chin. "I'm looking for the owner." "You found him. I'm Arlen Fullerton." The man glanced at Kerney's open badge case. "What brings you out this way, officer?" "I have a few questions to ask you about Luisa San Miguel." "Is something wrong?" "I just need to find her. She took a job last year at Horse Canyon. My wife sure hated to lose that girl. If she's not there, I don't know where she's working now. We haven't kept track of her. Have you checked at Horse Canyon?" "Yes." "What was her reason for leaving the Box Z?" "She just decided to move on, I guess." "Did Luisa talk about herself or her family in Mexico?" "Not much. She's a shy girl, quiet, keeps to herself." "Did she have any clashes with other employees? Any friction, disagreements, dissension?" "Not that I know about. She was pretty even-tempered, got along with everybody." "Everybody?" "Except when she got pestered." "Who pestered her?" "Well, it wasn't pestering to start. It was more like skirt-chasing. One of the neighboring ranch boys took a shine to her. Luisa didn't like him at all. But the kid wouldn't take no for an answer. It really got Luisa's back up." "What was the kid's name?" "Bernardo Barella. He works on the next spread over with his uncle." "Nestor Barella's grandson?" "That's him." At home, Gabe waited restlessly for Russell Thorpe to deliver the burglary reports that the Texas law enforcement agencies had faxed to the district office. Now that Orlando had announced his intentions to move away, the house seemed too big and Gabe felt vaguely uncomfortable in it. Thorpe arrived and hung around with an eager look on his face, hoping to learn what was up. Gabe thumbed through the papers, verified that the stolen items matched the information out of Texas, and looked at Thorpe. "Go recover the stolen property at Boaz's cabin and see what else you can find." "How do I keep you out of it, Sarge?" "If anyone asks, say you got an anonymous tip. Also write up a search warrant for Angie Romero's house. Get it signed and toss the place." "What's my probable cause for the warrant?" "You have reason to believe that the items taken in a Texas burglary are in Angie's house. Cite the Midland Police Department report." Thorpe strode through the front door and almost bounced his way down the front porch to his unit. Gabe smiled at Thorpe's rookie enthusiasm, knowing that soon it would get washed away by harsh reality. Several miles west of the Box Z headquarters, the ranch road took Kerney away from the open rangeland towards a somber line of steep-walled, forested mesas tinged purple and red. Halfway to the line camp he passed an unattended bulldozer, and the road became a worn indentation of tracks and ground-up sandstone and powder-dry clay. The line camp consisted of a battered mobile home on concrete blocks, and a well shed behind a falling-down single-story house with a spindle-work porch. Across a bare patch of ground was a horse trailer. Kerney recognized the truck in front of the mobile home as one of the vehicles he'd seen in Nestor Barella's family compound. The sound of his arrival brought two men out on the three-step, rough-cut stairs to the trailer. The men studied Kerney as he approached the trailer. The older man stepped down to meet him. Kerney ignored the kid, who had to be Bernardo, and kept his attention fixed on Rocky. "I'm Kevin Kerney. What do you want?" "I'm investigating the disappearance of Luisa San Miguel." "I know the girl. Haven't seen her around. I heard she went back to Mexico." "You knew her too, didn't you, Bernardo?" "Yeah, I knew her." A frown line crossed Bernardo's forehead, and the corners of his eyes tightened. Kerney stepped towards Bernardo. "I understand you were interested in Luisa." "Me? No way. Well, maybe for a little while, but she wasn't interested in me." Rocky snorted. "That's no lie." Bernardo shot his uncle a dirty look. "So I liked her and she didn't like me. Big deal." "Was it a big deal?" "I don't have to waste my time with babes that don't like me." "So it wasn't a big deal." "That's what I said." "Did you see her after she went to work at the Horse Canyon Ranch?" "Yeah, once or twice, but not to talk to." "How about last April outside Ollito's Frios on the road to Romeroville? Did you see her walking?" Bernardo shook his head. "Is that a no?" "No, okay?" "You were seen on that road in your grandfather's truck with a passenger the day Luisa disappeared." "Maybe I was, but I don't remember seeing her." "Who was with you?" "I don't know, man. That was a year ago. It could have been a lot of people. One of my bros, one of the family, anybody." Kerney moved even closer to break into Bernardo's personal space. He used his height advantage to force Bernardo to raise his head and look him in the eye. "But you didn't see Luisa." "I already said that." Bernardo took a step back. Rocky jabbed his finger hard against Kerney's shoulder before the cop could ask his next question. "Look, if Bernardo was driving my father's truck, he was working. That's the only time he gets to use it. But it wasn't you and Nestor's truck with your nephew." "Not likely. I always drive my own truck. Now, just leave." "Whatever you say." Kerney locked onto Bernardo again. "Did Luisa leave her Box Z job because of you?" "Because of me? That's crazy." "We'll talk again. I'll listen to anything you have to tell me." Kerney waited a few beats to raise Bernardo's tension, nodded goodbye to Rocky, gave Bernardo a quick final stare, and left. The grandeur of the valley and the canyonlands didn't hold Kerney's attention on the drive back. His mind stayed focused on Bernardo. Perhaps the kid had simply made some Don Juan moves on Luisa, got rejected, and, like a lot of young studs, moved on to greener pastures. But too many issues led Kerney away from such a generous conclusion. He stopped at the Las Vegas district office and called Emmett Griffin. "You said you saw Luisa occasionally refuse rides from strangers when she went out walking." "That's what I said." "Did you ever see her refuse a ride from someone she knew?" "I can't say that for sure." "Meaning?" "Once I saw Nestor Barella's grandson driving real slow on the wrong side of the road, talking to her while she was walking. It went on for maybe a minute or two. He spun his wheels and threw up a lot of dust when he left. You know, show-off kid stuff." "You mean Bernardo?" "That's the only grandson I know." "Did you ask Luisa about the incident?" "No, I didn't think anything of it at the time. She waved and smiled when I drove by. I figured she was just out on one of her evening walks." Kerney thanked Griffin and hung up. Bernardo had said he hadn't talked to Luisa after she started work at Horse Canyon. According to Emmett Griffin's recollection, that was a lie. In Anton Chico, Gabe took a look around to familiarize himself with the terrain. The phone company's records showed a customer named Bernadette Lucero had made a number of phone calls to Buena Vista Lumber and Supply. A cross-check revealed frequent calls from Joaquin Santisteban to Bernadette during the workday from his office phone and late at night from his home. The pattern of calls suggested that Joaquin's reconciliation with his wife hadn't kept him from keeping company with Bernadette. Aside from a modern public school and a post office housed in a mobile home on a large dirt lot, the village center consisted of old territorial buildings, a mercantile store, a church, a rectory, some traditional long adobe houses with narrow portals, and old stone cottages with tin roofs face two parallel lanes. Gabe stopped at the post office and approached the clerk after waiting for several locals to pick up their mail and leave. A round-faced woman with silver hair studied Gabe's credentials. "Do you know Bernadette Lucero? Why do you want to know?" "She applied for a job as a police dispatcher. We do a background investigation on every job applicant. It's required." "You must mean Gloria's daughter." "Is there more than one Bernadette Lucero living in Anton Chico?" "Not as far as I know." "What can you tell me about her?" "She's turned into a real good mother since she had the baby." "How old is her child?" "About 2 months. She had a boy." "Do you know the baby's father?" "Berna isn't married." "How can I find her?" "She lives next door to Gloria and Lenny." "Can you give me a last name?" "Alarid. Gloria is Berna's mother. She married Lenny after divorcing her first husband." "How do I get to Berna's house?" With directions in hand, Gabe sat in his car and thumbed through the notes he'd made after his last visit to Buena Vista Lumber and Supply. Lenny Alarid's name popped up, followed by the notation that he hauled piñon chips to Texas under contract to Buena Vista. Bernadette Lucero and the Alarids lived behind the church and rectory. A fenced lot enclosed 2 houses and a freestanding carport large enough for a semi-tractor. A full-sized domestic sedan and a pickup truck were parked in front of the pitched-roof adobe house. A smaller double-wide manufactured home stood nearby. A late-model sport utility vehicle was parked in front. Behind the carport was an old garage with an attached shed. Next to the shed was a major piñon and juniper woodpile. Gabe knocked at the door of the manufactured home first. The young woman who greeted him cradled a baby in one arm. She was bright-eyed, wore her long brown hair in soft curls, and was dressed in a dark blue sweatsuit. "Bernadette Lucero?" Gabe gave her a reassuring smile and flipped his badge case open. "Yes. May I come in?" "Sure." Gabe followed Bernadette inside and waited until she settled on the couch with the baby. "What a beautiful baby." "Everybody says that." "Does he look like you or like his father?" "Oh, his father, of course." "Joaquin must be very proud." "You know about Joaquin?" "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." "Only my mother and Lenny are supposed to know." "Debbie doesn't know?" "Why should she? Besides, Joaquin is leaving her soon. He's going to marry me this summer." "I see. Well, I really stopped by to see Lenny." "Lenny and my mother are out of town. She goes with him sometimes on his short runs." "I'm sorry I missed him. Maybe you can help me. Did you know Rudy Espinosa?" "I knew Rudy. He used to cut wood for Lenny." "Lenny sells wood?" "He takes truckloads to Texas every fall and sells them there." "And Rudy supplies the wood?" "He did last year." "What kind of truck did Rudy drive?" "It's in the garage behind the carport. Rudy always left it there. He didn't like to drive it every day because it used too much gas. He just used it mostly when he went wood cutting." "I hope Joaquin is taking good care of you and the baby." "He bought me my house, my car, the furniture, and he pays all the bills. He's a good man." "I bet he is." "Joaquin and Lenny must do a lot of business together. He keeps Lenny working a lot." "A lot?" "Well, for Lenny, it's one of his biggest contracts." "When will Lenny and Gloria get home?" "Not until tomorrow sometime." "Mind if I take a look at Rudy's truck in the garage?" "Go ahead." Gabe walked into the garage and let the grin he'd been holding back break across his face as soon as he saw the truck. He put on a pair of plastic gloves, opened the truck door, and popped the glove compartment. It contained a handgun. Gabe didn't touch it. He looked closely at the exterior of the doors to the vehicle. On the driver's side was a random pattern of minute brown specks. Quite probably Boaz's blood. He checked the tires. The tread pattern matched with those found in Boaz's cabin. Outside, he called Thorpe on his cell phone, who started talking before Gabe could. "We got a whole bunch of stolen stuff out of Angie's house." "Good deal, Russell. Now I want you down in Anton Chico pronto, with the crime scene unit. I found Rudy's truck and the handgun." Gabe slipped the phone into his jacket pocket. It was time to talk to Bernadette again. Since she had been willing to let him in the garage, she might just give him permission to take a look inside Lenny's house. A brief conversation with Bernadette yielded a signed form giving Gabe permission to search, and a key to Lenny's front door. After his phone conversation with Emmett Griffin, Kerney felt he finally had a suspect. He headed for Las Vegas. He'd promised Nestor Barella a key to the new gate lock, and it was time to make the delivery. Nestor Barella's living room was a combination of old and new. 2 hand-carved antique pine blanket chests served as side tables for an overstuffed couch and an imitation leather reclining chair that faced a television set. Nestor looked warily at Kerney as he questioned the older man about his grandson. "Does Bernardo frequently use your truck?" "No. Bernardo can only use my truck for work. That is my rule." "Is it a hard and fast rule?" "On occasion, when his truck is not running, I have let him borrow the truck." "Do you remember when that was?" "The last time was just after Thanksgiving. He needed to get a new water pump for his car." "And before that?" "It was last spring, in April, I believe. Bernardo's car would not start, and he had a friend to meet." "Do you remember who he was meeting?" "No." "I doubt it's important, but I do need to talk to Bernardo. Would you ask him to call me when he has a chance?" "I will see that he does." Minutes after leaving Nestor Barella's, Kerney got a phone call that took him to Anton Chico. He arrived to find a group of locals lined up along the fence of the Alarid property, watching crime scene technicians gathering evidence from a pickup truck inside a garage. Kerney spotted Captain Garduno in front of a single-story adobe house. Gabe Gonzalez, Russell Thorpe, and the patrol officer, a man Kerney didn't know, nodded when Kerney drew near. Garduno, red-faced and angry, opened his mouth to speak, thought better of it, and clamped his lips together. The officer wore corporal chevrons and hash marks on his uniform shirt denoting a senior patrolman with 10 years of service. His name tag read Art Garcia. Gabe introduced the 2 men. After shaking Garcia's hand, Kerney asked Gabe for a status report. "We've recovered a handgun, a chainsaw, and a pair of wire cutters from the truck. The gun is the same caliber used in the Boaz shooting. There's blood splatter on the driver's door, and the tires match the tread impressions we took at Boaz's cabin." "Do you have any idea why Rudy killed Boaz?" "According to Boaz's journal, he was squeezing Rudy for more money. I figure he knew that Rudy was pulling jobs in the San Geronimo area and fencing hot merchandise out of Texas. My guess is Rudy wanted to make sure Boaz didn't talk. That's a damn good motive for murder. Have you tied Rudy into any of the San Geronimo burglaries?" "Not yet. But I think Lenny Alarid and Joaquin Santisteban were in on them with Rudy. I doubt Rudy was the brains behind the operation." "Run it down for me." "Rudy was part of an interstate burglary and fencing scheme operating between here and West Texas. We've recovered a number of items from the Boaz cabin and Angie Romero's house that were taken in major West Texas heists. I believe Rudy kept some of the stolen merchandise for himself and gave some to Boaz as partial payment for access to the woodcutting site." "What else have you got?" "Joaquin is supporting a wife at home, as well as Berna over there with her new baby. He bought Berna a house, a car, and furniture, which I don't think he paid for out of the salary his daddy gives him. Berna is Lenny's stepdaughter. He makes frequent runs to West Texas hauling firewood and wood chips for Santa Esteban. I don't think that's all he's been freighting." "Do you have any hard evidence?" "No, but Berna said Lenny keeps a semi-trailer on the property that he uses for special runs. She doesn't know what kind. He moved it off the property yesterday." "You think he transferred the stolen goods?" "That's what I would have done. I'd like to send Thorpe and Officer Garcia down to Santa Rosa to poke around. If Alarid did move the stolen merchandise, Santa Rosa would be a good spot to store it." "Do it. Now, what can you tell me about Bernardo Barella that isn't in the background information?" "Not much. He had some juvenile arrests when he was in his early teens, mostly for getting into fights and underage drinking, the usual teenage stuff." "Anything since then?" "No. He seems to have straightened himself out." "So he's a good kid?" "Maybe. There's an edge to Bernardo. He's respectful with me, but I get the feeling it's just surface bullshit. You know how some kids cover up their insolence by acting super polite?" "Yeah, I do. That's Bernardo. Underneath, he thinks he's a tough guy." "Do you know who he hangs with?" "My son Orlando might. He's known Bernardo since high school." "How can I contact Orlando?" "He's at work." Gabe gave Kerney the name of the fast food burger joint. "Can I ask what you've got going, Chief?" "I've got a possible ID on the dead woman and information that Bernardo may have had more than a passing interest in her." "That's it?" "He was seen in the company of an unknown companion on the road to Ojitos Frios the day the dead woman disappeared." "That's worth checking out." "Is the victim on our missing persons list?" "She was never reported as missing." Gabe waited for more, but Kerney remained silent. "Chief, Captain Garduno is going to ding me for working this case, Chief. I'm getting a letter of reprimand for my personnel jacket." "No, you're not. Garduno is going to write me up. I made it an order." Speechless, Gabe watched Kerney leave. Never in his career had Gabe ever known of a commander or supervisor ordering a subordinate to write him up. Kerney's action took Gabe off the hook, big time. The chief knew how to keep his word. Although the day had not been overly hot, the cool of the evening brought many Tucson residents out on the streets. After dinner and a lot of small talk, Sarah and Susie wandered in and out of the bookstores, art galleries, boutiques, and antique shops that stayed open late to accommodate shoppers. Sarah paused at the window of an art gallery and studied a large oil of cottonwood trees in full fall color. "Susie, look. That's Irma Ferguson's work. The woman who left Kerney the land? Yes. It's a wonderful painting." Sarah stepped towards the gallery door. "Are you sure you want to go in? Why not?" "How about because you've avoided any mention of Kerney for the last 6 hours, Sarah? I'd hate to see you break your code of silence." "Don't be so sarcastic." The gallery had a large number of Irma's paintings. The owner explained that he had exclusively represented Irma in Tucson for a number of years. Sarah lost herself in Irma's landscapes, works that celebrated the light, sky, and vastness of the land. The smallest image was priced above $10,000, and most commanded 3 times that amount. The gallery owner heard Sarah sigh as she finished a second thorough inspection of Irma's paintings. "I have some of Irma's pencil drawings hanging in my office, mostly studies for her earlier egg temperas and watercolors. They're quite reasonably priced. Would you like to see them?" "I would love to." An hour later, Sarah left the gallery with the signed, framed pencil sketch of Hermit's Peak in her hand. The reasonable price had gouged a hole in her bank account, but Sarah didn't care. "When are you going to give it to him, Sarah?" "When I get back to Santa Fe. Tonight." "Listen, Sarah, don't try to have everything figured out. Let Kerney tell you what he wants." "He may not want anything. Do I detect a note of insecurity?" "Maybe. Until I met Kerney, I've always encouraged the men I've known to move on. And now, I can't seem to stay that tough-minded about him. Tell him that. Those aren't words I'm comfortable saying. Practice. You've got all night." "Oh, Susie, love is scary." "Yes!" "Yes, what?" "You use the L word." Kerney studied Orlando Gonzalez while he waited for the young man to finish his stint at the drive-up window of the burger joint. Kerney saw a hint of Gabe in the boy's features, but his face was thinner and his eyes a bit less deeply set. When the drive-up traffic slowed, the manager relieved Orlando and pointed in Kerney's direction. "Is my dad all right?" "He's fine, although you might not see much of him for a while. He's fairly busy right now." "Man, you scared me for a minute. All my boss said was that a cop wanted to see me." "Not to worry, Gabe hasn't been hurt." "Well, what do you want to talk to me about then?" "Bernardo Barella." "He's in trouble?" "Not necessarily. You've known Bernardo for a long time." "Yeah, but we don't hang together very much anymore." "When was the last time you saw him?" "We had a couple of beers a few nights ago. Before that, it's been maybe a year since we've seen each other." "Did he ever mention a girl by the name of Luisa San Miguel?" "I don't know that name. I don't know who he's dating." "What about his pals?" Orlando mentioned some names, which Kerney wrote down. "Did you do any cruising with Bernardo early last year? Around Ojitos Frios?" "I haven't cruised with Bernardo since we were in high school." "Has Bernardo ever done anything strange or weird?" "You mean like crazy shit?" "Not that I know about." "Thanks, Orlando." Orlando opened his mouth, closed it, and swallowed hard. "Did you want to say something?" "I gotta get back to work." Officers Garcia and Thorpe arrived in Santa Rosa and quickly discovered that there were no warehouses or storage units in the town. But they did find a number of boarded-up houses that Garcia decided to check out on the off chance that Alarid was using one for storage. He assigned Thorpe to one side of the strip and took the other. After 2 hours of close patrols, he contacted Thorpe by radio, called off the building checks, and met with him outside the Santa Rosa State Police substation. "I'm shutting it down, Thorpe. Go home." "I still think Sarge is right. Alarid has got to be warehousing the stolen merchandise somewhere." "Not in this town." Maybe he's storing it in the countryside somewhere, where he won't draw attention to himself. Possibly, but that covers a lot of territory. Garcia, I'll come back tomorrow morning and take another look around. Okay, but I want you back in Las Vegas by 1300. Now go home. Her name was Jessica Valera, and over the past 6 months Bernardo had learned a lot about her. She was 30, divorced, had no children, and lived alone on the second floor of an old house that had been converted into 2 apartments. She worked as a cashier at a hardware store and took night courses at the university. When Bernardo first saw her at the hardware store, he got really turned on. She hid her face behind long blonde hair, kept her head lowered when she spoke, and only looked up to give quick, shy glances. She had a smile that seemed like she was keeping secrets, a small, skinny body, slightly rounded shoulders, and a nice set of tits. He went into the store a lot to get stuff for the ranch, and he used each visit to talk to her at the register, asking 1 or 2 calculated questions. Bernardo sat in his car across from the hardware store and watched the lights inside the building go out and the employees leave. He waited until Jessica reached the traffic light at the corner before pulling onto the street to follow. She always took the same route home, so Bernardo didn't have to worry about losing her. He passed by as she pulled into her driveway, made a U-turn at the end of the block, turned off his headlights, and coasted to a stop in time to see her unlock the front door and step inside. He waited until the upstairs lights came on before getting out of his car. Usually he just drove away after she got home, but tonight something about the house was different. The downstairs apartment was dark, always before the lights had been on at night. Bernardo walked down the opposite side of the street before crossing, then strolled past Jessica's house. There was a for rent sign in the downstairs window. That made him smile. He'd been looking for a way to get inside without being seen or heard. Now, that problem was solved. Orlando had awakened thinking that if he waited until the end of the semester to move to Albuquerque, it might be too late. He figured out how much money he could pull together if he split. His stomach sank as a realization hit him that running away wouldn't change anything. His life would still be fucked. Well, he could still be ready to leave. As he headed out to hit the bank as it opened, the phone rang. "Hey, mano. Did a state cop named Kerney talk to you?" "Yeah, Bernardo, last night." "What about?" "You." "What did you say?" "Nothing." "We need to meet." "Why? And why is the cop interested in you?" "He's interested in both of us, bro. He asked me about driving around Ojitos Frios in my grandfather's truck with somebody last April." "Does he know that was you?" "No. What are we going to do?" "Come up with something simple about where we were and what we did. Get our story straight. Back each other up. He already talked to my grandfather. He wants to talk to me again." "Shit. We're screwed." "We gotta meet. Someplace where no one will see us." "How about down by the Galeas River, where we used to party in high school?" "When?" "Can you make it in a half hour?" "Yeah, I'll be there before 10. Just don't say anything to your old man." "I'm not stupid, Bernardo." His hand shaking, Orlando hung up the phone. There wasn't much left of the old settlement on the Galeas River, just some partial stone and adobe walls and occasional piles of junk. As far as Bernardo knew, the place didn't have a name. It had been settled and abandoned several times, and was now part of Arlen Fullerton's Box Z spread. Leaning against the hood of Uncle Rocky's car, he heard the sound of tires on gravel, and turned to see Orlando's car topping the low hill. The vehicle slowed to a stop, and Orlando got out. On the drive to the settlement, a thought had passed through Orlando's mind. Now, as he got out of the car, he stared at Bernardo. "How did Kerney put us in Ojitos Frios?" "Somebody saw us in my grandfather's truck." "Did you tell him we were there?" "I said I didn't remember. He's probably questioning everybody who knew Luisa. Don't get all bent out of shape. We'll get our shit together and it'll all be cool." Something clicked in Orlando's mind. "But he's doing a background investigation on you, asking who your friends are, where you were last April. If you knew Luisa, that means you're a target." "Did you learn that cop shit from your old man?" "You knew Luisa, didn't you?" "Yeah, I knew her." "She never wanted to party with us that night, did she?" "I had to convince her." "You meant to rape her all along." Bernardo didn't respond. "Do the cops know that you knew her?" Yeah, but it doesn't mean squat. You don't get it, do you? You're a fucking suspect. So what? Orlando turned to walk back to his car. Where are you going? I'm splitting. I'm done with it. It's over, Bernardo. Bernardo grabbed Orlando by the arm. Are you going to snitch me off? Orlando yanked Bernardo's hand off his arm and pushed him away. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll let you know when I decide. That's not good enough, Orlando. Bernardo grabbed the handle to his knife. Live with it. Can't do it, bro. Bernardo drove the blade under Orlando's ribcage and ripped up to find his heart. Orlando grunted once, his mouth open like a feeding fish, his eyes already empty. Bernardo pulled the knife free and slit Orlando's throat. He wanted the body drained of blood before he hauled it to the truck. When the blood flow turned to a slight trickle, he dumped the body in the truck bed and covered it with hay bales he'd brought along. Using a shovel, he dug around the sticky, deep red blood pool, turning the soil until dry earth covered the ground. Uncle Rocky had told him to finish grading the road to the line camp and get the bulldozer back to the Box Z. From today on, anybody who used that road would be driving over Orlando's bones. At the start of his shift, Russell Thorpe did a close patrol of Puerto de Luna, a settlement 10 miles southeast of Santa Rosa. As he crisscrossed and jutted buttes, mesas, arroyos, and canyon lands on rutted tracks that seemed to go nowhere, he realized that he could spend days in the boonies, find nothing, and still have hundreds of places left to search. Back in Puerto de Luna, he stopped at the community center and talked to a cook and her elderly male assistant, who were in the kitchen preparing a midday meal for senior citizens. Thorpe watched the stout middle-aged woman ladle food into styrofoam containers. Do either of you know Lenny Alarid? I don't think so. He's a truck driver. Lots of people around here drive trucks. Thorpe described Alarid's rig. Never saw it. The old man put a container into a portable warming cart and waited to receive the next meal. I have. Where? At Perfecta Velarde's barn. The truck was there yesterday when I delivered her meal to her. Does she have any visitors? Yes, her daughter and son-in-law. The daughter's name is Gloria. I didn't meet the man. Do you know Gloria's married name? No, but she lives in Anton Chico. Where is Perfecta's place? On the highway to Santa Rosa. The truck is parked next to the barn. I didn't see it on the way in. You can't. A hill blocks it from view. You have to be driving back to Santa Rosa to see your place from the highway. How far? 2 miles. It's just before the road curves around the mesa. You'll see it. Thanks. Russell keyed the radio as he left the community center and made contact with Art Garcia. Thorpe floored his unit along a straightaway, braked through a gradual curve, and saw Perfecta's barn and Alarid's rig. Garcia, truck in sight. Can you positively ID the rig? Russell rolled to a stop, reached for his binoculars, and focused on the lettering on the driver's door. It's Alarid's. He's got the trailer unhitched from his cab. Looks like he's planning to leave it there. Give me an exact location. Thorpe snapped off directions into the microphone. Good work, Thorpe. ETA 10 minutes. Sergeant Gonzalez is rolling now. Lenny Alarid watched the cops from the living room window. For 20 minutes, police cars had been parked at the end of his mother-in-law's driveway. At first, Lenny told himself the cops were just taking a break and shooting the shit. Now his gut ached with a feeling that he was about to be busted. Lenny gave Gloria a scared look. Take your mother into the kitchen. Gloria went to her mother just as the phone rang. She picked it up, listened for a moment, and held it out to Lenny with a shaky hand. Yeah? This is Sergeant Gonzalez with the New Mexico State Police, Lenny. We're here to serve a warrant. I want you to step outside the house and stand in plain view with your hands where I can see them. Are you armed? No? Hang up the phone and step outside. Stay calm and nobody gets hurt. On the porch step with his hands palms out and open, Lenny watched the 4 police cars come up the driveway. Gabe didn't see any bulges in Lenny's clothing. Very slowly, Lenny. I want you to make one complete turn and then stop. Keep your hands away from your body. Lenny finished the turn to find 2 of the cops within striking distance. One held a gun on him while a baby-faced officer patted him down. He's clean. The baby-faced cop tossed Lenny's truck keys to Gabe. Check inside. The cops moved into the house as Gabe walked to Lenny, smiled, and handed him some papers. What's this? This is a warrant to search your truck and trailer, Lenny. What's in the trailer? Water heaters, Washing machines and some other stuff. You got a bill of lading for the cargo? No. Gabe stepped behind Lenny and cuffed him. You're arresting me? Yeah, let's go take a look in the box. But first, let me tell you about your rights. Lenny refused to confess anything other than transporting one load of stolen property, still in original factory crates and boxes, boosted from a regional warehouse distribution center in El Paso. Gabe took Alarid into the kitchen, closed the door, sat him down at the table. This isn't going to work, Lenny. Why not? I confessed, didn't I? I forgot to explain a few things to you. Like what? I'm going to have to book you on a murder charge. I didn't kill anybody. I know that, but we found Rudy's truck and the murder weapon hidden on your property. That makes you an accessory after the fact to murder. I didn't know he killed Boaz. The law is funny about being an accessory. If you help Rudy in any way, you can be charged with murder. Probably second degree. That's crazy. Then there's the conspiracy charge. What conspiracy? You paid Rudy for all that wood he poached? Don't tell me you didn't know where he got it. He never told me. You'll have to convince a jury of that. You're looking at a shitload of felonies. Gabe ticked them off on his fingers. Lenny held up a hand to stop Gabe. What do you want? All of it. Your Texas contacts, who you delivered to, what Rudy boosted that you trucked out of state, where you took it, and what arrangements you had with Joaquin Santisteban. What do I get? Probably a break from the district attorney. If you cooperate. What kind of break? Tell you what. I'll ask the DA to drop the murder and conspiracy charges. He might even be willing to cut back on the number of receiving stolen property indictments. After all, you'll be going into court as a first-time offender. I'll do time? Maybe, maybe not. But answer one question for me. How did Joaquin tip off Rudy that I was nosing around? He didn't use the office telephone. He used my cell phone. You were at the woodlot? I was on the office crapper when you came into the trailer. I just stayed out of sight until you split. By noontime, Kerney was down to the last person on the list of names Orlando Gonzalez had given him. So far, none of Bernardo's friends and former high school classmates had provided any relevant information. His last potential informant was Melissa Pena, now married and known as Melissa Valencia. Kerney identified himself to her and asked about Bernardo. I can't really tell you very much about him. I was told you were once good friends. Not me. He was my best friend's boyfriend. I kind of put up with him because of her, but I never really liked him. Do you know of any other women Bernardo has been involved with? Melissa inclined her head and thought about the question for a moment. It may be nothing, but talk to Jimmy Wooten. The name wasn't familiar to Kerney. Why should I speak to him? Jimmy's home on leave from the Air Force. He and my husband were good friends in high school. He told my husband that he ran into Bernardo at a bar recently, and that Bernardo acted like a real creep towards some cocktail waitress. I don't know anything more than that. Kerney got an address for Jimmy Wooten and smiled at Melissa. I appreciate your time. Jimmy Wooten, dressed in jeans and an Air Force sweatshirt, stood outside his parents' house. He ran a hand through his short, light blonde hair and gave Kerney a puzzled look in response to Kerney's questions about Bernardo. Why are you investigating Bernardo? It's a small matter. I didn't know that hustling a barmaid was against the law. Did she file a complaint or something? No. Then what's the problem? There might not be one. I understand that you told Melissa's husband that Bernardo acted like a creep towards the barmaid. I'd like to hear what happened. Melissa has never liked Bernardo. Is he your friend? Not really. I knew him in high school. You still haven't told me what's up. I'm interested in Bernardo's attitude towards women. That's all you're going to tell me? For now. Did Bernardo come under the waitress? He tried, but she just blew him off. She showed him her wedding ring and made like a joke out of it, said her husband didn't let her date other men. The barmaid didn't play up to Bernardo or lead him on? Not at all. How did Bernardo handle her rejection? It pissed him off. He didn't believe she was married. He wanted to bet me he could get in her pants. Did you take him up on the bet? No way. I told him he was full of shit and to leave her alone. Did anything else happen between Bernardo and the barmaid? Not while I was there. Did you leave the bar with Bernardo? Nope. Bernardo said he was going to stay until the place closed. I don't do that kind of drinking. Do you remember the barmaid's name? Carrie something. What bar does she work at? The Rough Rider. You still haven't told me what this is all about. No, I haven't. Kerney made a quick stop at the Rough Rider bar and spoke with the owner, who told him that Carrie Crombie was due back for her shift at 6 o'clock in the evening. He found out that Crombie was married, had a little girl, and lived in a subdivision just outside of the city limits. The working-class neighborhood sat on a small bluff overlooking the Galeas River. The neighborhood consisted of older, flat-roof frame and stucco houses on small, rectangular lots. Their front yards were neat and tidy. 2 large evergreen trees towered over the Crombie house. Kerney knocked, got no answer, and found a woman in the backyard hanging laundry. A little girl no more than 5 years old stood at her side. The woman stopped what she was doing and came towards Kerney. "Can I help you?" "I hope so, Mrs. Crombie." Kerney showed his ID and studied the woman. Of medium build and about 30 years old, Carrie Crombie had a narrow head, curly red hair, a pale complexion, and tired eyes. He held out Bernardo Barella's driver's license and photograph. "Do you know this person?" Carrie Crombie took the photograph and looked at it. "I know who he is. He drinks at the bar where I work." "Has he given you any trouble?" "No more than any other drunk who thinks barmaids are easy targets." "How long has he been drinking at the Rough Rider?" "Ever since he turned 21. He comes into the bar a couple of times a week." "Has he shown any unusual interest in you?" "Mister, I've been working in bars and nightclubs for 7 years. To me, he's just another horny drunk with a foul mouth and wandering hands." "You haven't seen him around your house?" "No." "Do you think he might be a stalker?" "It's possible." Kerney knelt down and showed the photo to the little girl. "Have you seen this man?" Very seriously, the child studied the photograph. "I saw him." "When?" "When I was on the front porch playing with my dolls." "Today?" "The other day before we went to the movies." "Did he say anything to you?" "Nope, he just walked by the house." "Just once?" "More than that." "If you see him again when you're outside the house, I want you to go and tell your mom right away. Will you do that for me?" "Yeah." Carrie Crombie pulled her daughter close. "Is this guy a child molester?" "I think he could be dangerous." "This is spooky." "I know, but I'd rather have you spooked than hurt." The repair work to the ranch road was finished, and the washouts, cuts, and ruts had been smoothed out and packed down. At the line camp that served as a Barella Ranch headquarters, the bulldozer idled near the cattle guard. Kerney rattled over the rails and coasted to a stop in front of the trailer. Bernardo came outside and met him. "My grandfather said you were looking for me." Kerney smiled pleasantly. "We haven't been able to identify the human remains that we found on the mesa. I thought you should know." "You mean it wasn't Luisa like you thought?" "I don't think I ever said that I thought it was Luisa." "I can put 2 and 2 together." "I'm sure you can. We have no idea who the victim was. We can't assume it was Luisa or anyone else at this point." "That's all you wanted to tell me?" "Pretty much. We'll keep the case open, but unless we get lucky, it'll probably remain unsolved. I'm sorry to have bothered you." "You didn't bother me." "Well, I leaned on you a bit the other day. You were just doing your job. Nobody likes to think they might be a suspect." "Hey, I told you what I knew." "And I appreciate it." Kerney stepped towards Bernardo and held out his hand. "No hard feelings?" Bernardo shook Kerney's hand and smiled. "Everything's cool." Bernardo looked pleased, which was just the way Kerney wanted him to feel. He waved goodbye as he drove away, and Bernardo waved back. Kerney had no doubt Bernardo was a budding rapist and murderer. Everything he'd learned about him fit the profile, but proving it wasn't going to be easy. If his ploy with Bernardo worked, he might let his guard down and make a mistake. But what that mistake might be, Kerney couldn't predict. Kerney had a strong hunch that, with the pressure off, Bernardo might feel free to make a move on Carrie Crombie. He decided to put a 24-hour surveillance team in place to watch Bernardo. Gabe Gonzalez felt damn good about the way his day had gone. Lenny Alarid's confession had generated major busts in West Texas and New Mexico. It was without a doubt one of the biggest cases Gabe had cleared in his 20-year career. He signed the last report as Captain Garduno walked into the conference room. "Gabe, the arrest warrant for San Esteban just came in." "Good deal." Gabe hadn't thought there would be any problem. According to Lenny Alarid, San Esteban's method of targeting burglary victims was quite simple. When firewood orders came in from well-heeled customers, Joaquin would make the deliveries himself and take a look around. and Joaquin would ask a few innocent-sounding questions. If everything looked cool, Rudy would cruise the neighborhood for a couple of days, peddling pickup loads of firewood. He would go door to door, sell a few loads here and there, and scope out the target some more. A month or so later, when no one remembered the friendly wood peddler, Rudy would pull the job. In 18 months, Rudy had pulled more than 50 burglaries, many of them in upscale, rural Santa Fe areas, a short hour's drive from Las Vegas. Rudy's break-ins at the weekend cabins and vacation homes around San Geronimo had also been Joaquin's idea. He'd used his time living with Uncle Isaac to scope out the best places to rob. When the firewood season ended, he sent Rudy out to rip off the second homes and mountain retreats of baby boomers who'd built expensive hideaways in the cool foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And Gabe, the grand jury delivered a true bill of justified homicide on the Espinosa shooting. You can go back to work now. Gabe said nothing as Garduno put a department memorandum on the table. He pulled the document close and read it. Art Garcia had been bumped up to sergeant, and Gabe's promotion to lieutenant had come through. He was assigned as Garduno's assistant district commander. Are you okay with this, Captain? Hell, I wouldn't have it any other way. You've earned it. The dispatcher at the district office tapped on the glass partition to the radio room as Kerney walked by. He stuck his head inside and the woman gave him a pile of telephone messages. He started scanning through them. About every third message was from Ruth Pinot. You're a hard man to reach, Chief Kerney. He looked up to find Professor Pinot standing in front of him. Her tone carried a note of displeasure and her expression wasn't cheery. He waited for more. I've made an appointment for you to meet with Reese Carson at the Nature Conservancy tomorrow morning. I'm afraid that's not possible, Professor. Is the Nature Conservancy interested in the land? Reese has been exploring options. Isn't there some way you can free up your schedule? Not tomorrow. We must move quickly, Chief Kerney. There are many legal issues to be ironed out before probate is settled. It is to your advantage to meet with Reese. Kerney thumbed through more of his phone messages. I should have some time this weekend. I suppose that will have to do. Reese will be with me and a group of volunteers on the mesa this weekend. Kerney stared at the last message. The brief note read, Call home, Sarah. It had been logged in before noon. He nodded in response to Ruth Pinot, his mind 60 miles away in Santa Fe. I'll come up to the mesa this weekend. When this weekend? Either Saturday or Sunday. Kerney was no longer willing to hide his exasperation with the woman. He nodded a curt goodbye to Pinot and left the building. He considered calling to see if Sarah was still waiting at home for him and decided against it. If she had already come and gone, he didn't want to get slammed by that reality. Kerney saw Sarah's jeep and all of its uncertainty about her sudden departure rush through his mind again. He got out of his unit not knowing what to expect and moved slowly up the walkway towards his house. He was halfway there when Sarah opened the door. Where's your dog, Kerney? What happened to Shu? I sent him to an 8-year-old boy in California who desperately wanted him back. You didn't. I had to. I wasn't about to lie to the kid and keep his dog. But Shu was abandoned, abused. Lost is more like it. The boy called me at work after Shu arrived to thank me. Shu is safe and his owner is happy. Then you did the right thing. It wasn't easy. You really like that dog. You can't always have what you want. What do you want to tell me, Sarah? We need to talk. About things. First, I want to apologize for the way I left, but I had to get my head straight. I was feeling shy, frightened, wary, and confused. What about you? I came here thinking it would be great to see you and that it would be just a lot of fun. Then I wound up realizing that I couldn't treat this lightly. This, you and me. My feelings about you aren't casual. What do you want, Kerney? I don't want to lose you. My friend Susie says I should hit you with my best shot, which is a straightforward question. How do you feel about marriage? The woman would have to be very special. Don't be glib. Tell me how you really feel. As confused as you. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm scared I might lose you, and right this minute that's all that matters. Does that mean you want a relationship with me, Kerney? Something more than time together every year or two when we can fit it in? I want as much of you as I can get. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you in my life. Sarah moved to him, put her arms around his neck and rested her head on his chest. That sounds like a plan. Take me to bed, Kerney. We can work out the details later. In the bedroom, Sarah snuggled against Kerney's shoulder. That was lovely, Kerney. Yeah, exceptionally lovely. Maybe we should just stay lovers. We could see each other as time allows, right? Vacation together. Sort of a non-nuptial agreement. You don't like my idea? It doesn't feel right. So marry me. Seriously? If you're game. Just like that? Say yes before I back out, Kerney. Yes. I want to get married at my parents' ranch. We've got 3 weeks to pull it off. Have you ever been to Ireland, Sarah? You want a honeymoon trip too? Why not? This is scary, Kerney. Let's do it anyway. I bought you a present. Sarah turned on the bedside lamp and handed him a package. Kerney pulled himself into a sitting position, unwrapped it, saw the drawing of Hermit's Peak, and knew it was Irma's work. My God, it's beautiful. She did it from the mesa. You think so? I love it. Isn't it exquisite? That reminds me, you owe me a camping trip to the mesa. This weekend? That's fine by me. He put the drawing to one side and reached for Sarah. What are you doing? Come here. Don't distract me, Kerney. I have to call my mother. That can wait. No, it can't. Once I tell my mother we're getting married, there's no backing out. Call her right now. I'm going to keep my maiden name. Sarah leaned over and kissed him. I love you. And I love you. The answering machine message light blinked at Gabe when he got home. He hit the play button and listened to 3 calls from Orlando's boss at the burger joint. Each more agitated than the last. Orlando had not shown up to work his shift. It wasn't like Orlando to treat his job lightly. Unless he was sick, Gabe couldn't remember a time when Orlando had missed work. He hoped Orlando hadn't kissed off work to hang out with Bernardo. He dialed Ben Morfin's cell phone number. This is Morfin. Ben, are you and Thorpe watching Bernardo now? You bet. Is my son with the subject? Negative. The subject is home. He arrived alone and there have been no visitors. Thanks. Gabe hung up and tried to remember when Orlando was planning to visit his mother in Albuquerque. He thought it was next week, but he couldn't be sure. He punched in Teresa's numbers. Orlando wasn't expected until the next week. Gabe spent the next several hours at the kitchen table taking the sergeant stripes off his uniform shirts and sewing cloth lieutenant bars on the collars. He had half a mind to go looking for Orlando, but held back. Orlando didn't need an overprotective cop father looking for him in the middle of the night. He was over 21, technically an adult, and a hell of a good kid to boot. If he needed a night out to blow off some steam, so be it. Gabe checked Orlando's room early in the morning. His bed hadn't been slept in. He decided to think positively about Orlando's overnight absence. The kid didn't talk about his love life, and Gabe didn't pry. Sometimes Orlando would stay out all night, come home looking pleased with himself, and shrug off any mention of where he'd been. Within a couple of days, Orlando would start getting lots of phone calls. When that happened, Gabe didn't see much of his son until Orlando's interest in the girl cooled off. He got to work before the day shift arrived and left a message on the answering machine at home for Orlando to call him at the office. He put the Alarid Santisteban files for his meeting with the DA in his briefcase and looked up to find Captain Garduno standing in the doorway, a frown on his face. Captain, what's wrong? A rancher just called in the license plate of an abandoned vehicle south of town on the Galias River. Dispatch ran it through motor vehicles. It's your son's car. Orlando didn't come home last night. It may mean nothing, Gabe. Orlando's car was unlocked and his keys were in the ignition. A bank cash envelope sat on the dashboard. Garduno waited until Gabe moved off before clicking on his radio handset. I want search and rescue, including bloodhounds, and every available unit up here at Arlen Fullerton's ranch ASAP. And contact Chief Kerney and ask him to get up here pronto. The helicopter pilot cleared the ridge line and dropped down to plant the bird 100 yards from Gonzalez and Garduno. Kerney jumped out and quickly approached the 2 men. Gabe's face had worry written all over it. Garduno's impassive expression looked forced. What have we got? Garduno took the lead. Gabe's son left home yesterday morning. He cut his classes at the university, didn't show up for work last night, and never went home. One of Arlen Fullerton's ranch hands noticed Orlando's car here about noon yesterday. There was nobody around. The car wasn't reported as abandoned until this morning when Fullerton and a few of his people came back to move some cattle to another part of the ranch. Kerney looked at Gabe. No sign of struggle? No, nothing. You searched the car. Nothing's missing. But I found over $700 on the dashboard. Orlando cashed his paycheck and cleaned out his savings and checking accounts right after the bank opened yesterday morning. Withdrawal slips were in the envelope with the money. Was the vehicle locked? No, and the keys were in the ignition. Orlando would never do that. Did the car break down? It runs just fine. Do you have any ideas why Orlando needed so much cash? None, but it's every dime he had. When did you last see Orlando? Early yesterday morning. Did the two of you talk? Yeah. I asked him why he was leaving early. He said he had to meet some guy from school who wanted to borrow his lecture notes. He didn't say who it was. Is that all? Pretty much. He got a phone call while I was in the shower. Who from? Orlando said it was from the kid who wanted to borrow his notes. The search and rescue team had arrived and mounted up. 4 riders crossed the river, moved through the bottomland, and disappeared into the forest. So it's possible Orlando decided to play hooky. Don't feed me that crap. Something stinks here. You know it, and I know it. Gabe was reacting like a parent, not like a cop. Kerney decided not to push the point. Who would he come here to meet? I don't fucking know. Okay, we'll talk to all his friends, but first let's see if we can find out who called him. Kerney opened his pocket notebook, tore out a page, and gave it to Garduno. Here are the names and phone numbers of everyone I talked to about the Mesa homicide. Call dispatch and have them request phone company records on any calls made to Gabe's phone. Start with Bernardo. You're fucking crazy to think my son had anything to do with that. You wanted me to cut the crap, Gonzalez. Bernardo works 20 miles from here. He's the only person I know with a legitimate reason to be anywhere near this place during the day. You're way off the mark. Let's hope so. Gabe gave Kerney an unpleasant look, walked back to the river, and stood alone with his back turned and head lowered. Garduno reached inside his unit to pick up the radio handset. A pickup truck with 3 dogs in the bed stopped, and a stocky woman with short brown hair got out. I'm Martha Owens. Where do you want my dogs? Before either could answer, the dogs started barking, straining against their leashes. Owens went to the dogs and tried to calm them. The barking continued in spite of her efforts. They smell something, Captain. Either a body or blood. We've searched. Nothing's here. My dogs say otherwise. Annie will show us. She's the best of the lot. Martha unsnapped the leash of a female hound, and the dog jumped out of the truck before Owens could drop the tailgate. The hound made for a spot just off the road and started digging while her companions in the truck kept up a steady howl. Kerney and Garduno converged on Owens and her dog. Clumps of dirt flew as the hound dug deeper. Martha dropped to one knee, scooped up a handful of moist dirt, and sniffed it. It smells like blood to me, lots of it. The ground is saturated. I can't tell you what kind of blood, but something got slaughtered here recently. Kerney felt the presence of someone at his side. Gabe's voice was choked. Sweet Jesus. Mother Mary. Don't jump to conclusions, Gabe. Gabe looked at Kerney like he was a complete stranger. Garduno's call sign came over the radio. He hurried to his unit. Go, dispatch. The phone company reports a call made from the first number you gave me to the Gonzalez residence. 10-4. Gabe was losing control. Let's go get the son of a bitch. Kerney grabbed Gabe's arm to hold him back. Not yet. We'll do this my way. Kerney kept Gabe Gonzalez at his side during the time it took to implement a sweep to gather information about Orlando's whereabouts during the last 24 hours. Bernardo Barella would remain under full surveillance while officers backtracked at the bank, the university, and the burger joint where Orlando worked, questioning employees, classmates, professors, and anyone else who might have seen Orlando or knew where he could be. Kerney pulled Ben Morphin back on duty to do follow-ups on the people who'd been interviewed in the Luisa San Miguel slaying. He couldn't discount the possibility that it might tie into Orlando's disappearance. Garduno reported that Fullerton hadn't put down any of his livestock at the river, and the look on Gabe's face told Kerney that Gonzalez was about to explode. Tell Fullerton we're coming over to talk to him. They found Arlen Fullerton in the equipment barn, watching one of his employees weld a new lip on the bulldozer blade. Did you find that missing boy yet, Chief? We're still looking. Did you see Bernardo yesterday? Yeah, when he returned the bulldozer. He was late getting it back. What time was that? 4 o'clock or thereabouts. He came looking for me to say he'd gouged a chuck out of the blade. Said he'd hit some hard rock while he was grading the road. I don't see how he did it. That's mostly shale and sandstone he was moving around. How did he get back to his truck? I gave him a ride. Did he talk about anything? Just some small talk about how many cow and calf units his uncle planned to run during the summer. Did you see him after that? Haven't seen him since. Although he was tired, Russell Thorpe's enthusiasm for his first solo surveillance assignment hadn't diminished. He'd followed Bernardo to an early morning stop at a hardware store, and then to a ranch and farm supply business where Bernardo loaded up an order of steel fence posts and rolls of wire. From there, Bernardo drove out of town on the frontage road to the San Geronimo overpass and took a blacktop highway that turned to gravel a few miles outside the village. Thorpe used a dust trail kicked up by the tires to follow Barella through the settlement to Chief Kerney's property. Through binoculars, he watched Bernardo unlock the gate, drive through, and park. After 20 minutes, Ruth Pino and her students arrived in a van. He saw Bernardo and the professor exchange a few words and then drive down the ranch road in a caravan, Bernardo leading the way. Several hours passed before Bernardo returned alone with an empty truck and headed toward town. Bernardo led Russell down the main drag and onto a side street adjacent to the university, cruising through a residential neighborhood of old homes that had been converted into duplex and apartment rentals for college students. Several blocks into the neighborhood, on a tree-lined street, Bernardo pulled to the curb, parked, and walked to a waiting car. A middle-aged man got out, shook Bernardo's hand, and took him up the sidewalk to a small two-story Victorian cottage. The man unlocked the front door and gestured to Bernardo to enter first. Russell waited for a minute, then drove by the house slowly, jotting down the phone number on the rental sign in the front window and the license plate number of the man's car. He circled the block and parked at the end of the street. A few minutes passed before Bernardo and the man came out and stood on the sidewalk talking. Whatever the man said made Bernardo shrug his shoulders and shake his head. The man handed something that looked like a business card to Bernardo, went to his vehicle, and drove away. Bernardo waited until the man was out of sight before he dropped the card into the gutter and crossed to his truck. Russell retrieved the card after Bernardo left, caught up with him at a red light, and tailed him across the main drag to a street that fronted the old railroad station and hotel. Bernardo parked and went inside the Rough Rider bar. He looked at the business card Bernardo had thrown away. It was from a local property management company. The phone number on the card matched the number on the rental sign in the window of the house. Maybe Bernardo was thinking about getting a place of his own. Russell waited in his hot car. The day had warmed considerably and Thorpe's air conditioner didn't work. His shirt collar felt sticky against the back of his neck, and he could feel sweat dripping down his armpits. And after yesterday's double shift and only a few hours of sack time, the heat made him feel drowsy. Kerney didn't want to leave any avenue of the investigation unexplored and continued to question Arlen Fullerton. Did any of your ranch hands see anyone around the abandoned car yesterday? I would have heard if they did. They have standing orders to run off trespassers and report them to me. Those kids make a mess when they party at the river, and I don't pay my people to spend their time cleaning up beer bottles, garbage, and broken glass. What did the man who reported the car tell you? That would be Marcello, and he doesn't speak much English. Anyway, he told me that around 11 o'clock, as he was loading the feed truck, he spotted the abandoned car. I asked him if he saw anybody around the area, and he said no. He did mention that he saw the Barellas drive by. What he meant was that he saw the ranch's pickup heading toward their spread. Now that I tell you that, I remember he told me something else that amused me. Marcello said they were driving very fast and that maybe it was just Bernardo, because Rocky doesn't let him drive that way when he's in the truck. Gabe turned away from Fullerton and faced Kerney. Let's go get Bernardo. Not yet. What more do you want, for Christ's sake? We got Bernardo calling Orlando at home, and a witness who puts Bernardo in the immediate vicinity an hour before Orlando's car was discovered. I want the same thing you do, Gabe.
But first we find out what everybody working the case has uncovered. My son could be out there hurt or dead. I know how you feel. No, you don't know. You just think you know. Kerney's call sign came over the radio. He picked up the microphone and responded. Garduno came on the horn. Our subject has eluded surveillance. When did it happen? At 1200 hours. Where? The Rough Rider bar? Bring Thorpe in and have him stand by. He's standing by. Swarm the city with every available officer. I want that subject found. We're already looking. Nothing so far. Stop and detain, Chief? Negative. Locate and follow only. Morphin gets the call as soon as the subject has been spotted. 10-4. Captain, anything from search and rescue? No sign of any campers in the canyons. The dogs are out and the team is still looking. They'll shut it down at nightfall. 10-4. Okay, Gabe. We're on our way back to town. This is bullshit. For Christ's sake, tell Garduno to pick Bernardo up. We got enough to hold him for questioning. We do it my way or you go home. 1 block over from Jessica Varella's apartment, Bernardo waited in his truck until the lunch hour ended and students were hurrying out of their apartments headed to afternoon classes. He walked down the alley between the two streets, past the detached garages at the back of the lots. He stopped, pushed against the side door to the garage in Jessica's backyard, and stepped inside. A small window facing the back porch of the house let in a shaft of light. The garage and the window would give Bernardo a perfect hiding place and vantage point. He ran over his plan as he walked back to his truck. The only access to Jessica's apartment was through the front door that led to the ground floor apartment and a staircase to the second story. He would have no trouble getting into the building. During his tour of the empty apartment with the property management dude, he'd unlocked the back door and unlatched the kitchen window. Once inside, breaking into Jessica's apartment would be no sweat. Her apartment door had been hung with the hinges on the exterior side. All he had to do was pop off the hinges and he'd be in. Then he'd rehang the door and be waiting when Jessica got back from her night class. Bernardo drove away, wondering what he would do to Jessica after she got home. There were so many options to consider, but he had all day to decide. The thought struck him that Jessica's long blonde hair would be a trophy worth keeping. Russell Thorpe sat on the edge of his chair looking like an overgrown burly schoolboy who'd been sent to the principal's office. He didn't know which made him feel worse, blowing his assignment or lying about it with a lame story about how a beer delivery truck had blocked his view of the bar just long enough to allow Bernardo to leave unnoticed. Russell kept his gaze fixed on the wall behind the 4 men sitting across the conference table and waited for the axe to fall. Captain Garduno consulted the notes he'd made while Russell had been talking. What exactly happened at the vacant apartment? Like I said, Bernardo met this man from a property management firm. They were inside the apartment for maybe 5 minutes. When they came out, they talked briefly. The man gave Bernardo his card and then left. Bernardo threw the card away. I guess he didn't like the place. Kerney read the name on the business card. Aside from Ruth Pinot and this Chuck Beasley, did Bernardo talk to anyone else? Not as far as I know, Chief. He may have when he was in the bar. So Bernardo went directly from the Mesa to meet with Beasley at the apartment? That's right. Did he buy anything at the hardware store this morning? I didn't see him walk out carrying anything. That's strange. How long was Bernardo waiting for the hardware store to open? 10, 15 minutes? You don't wait for a store to open, go in and buy nothing. Kerney looked at Gabe. We'll follow up with Beasley in the hardware store. He turned back to the young officer. That's all, Thorpe, but don't leave until I talk to you. I'll just be a few minutes. Kerney waited to speak to Garduno until the door closed behind Thorpe. Captain, do we have anything from the field? With the exception of Gabe, the teller at the bank, and the burger joint managers, so far nobody has seen or talked to Orlando since yesterday morning. What about the student who called and asked to borrow Orlando's class notes? We've talked to every student enrolled in Orlando's classes. No one's admitted to making any such call. So the only verified early morning call to Orlando we've got is from Bernardo. That's right, Chief. Do we have Carrie Crombie covered? We got her buttoned down, Chief. Kerney got to his feet and looked at Gabe. I'll meet you at your unit. I'll be there. Outside the conference room, Kerney found a nervous Russell Thorpe waiting for him. You fell asleep on duty, didn't you? I tried not to. It happens to every officer at least once. Most are lucky and don't get caught. Are you going to fire me, Chief? No. But if you ever lie to me or any other supervisor again, you'll be driving that imaginary beer truck that stopped outside the bar. Do I make myself clear? Yes, sir. Now go to work. Outside, Gabe's unit was missing from the parking lot. Kerney went back to Garduno's office. Gabe took off. I need a vehicle. Garduno tossed Kerney his car keys. Take my unit and go easy on him, Chief. He's a good man. I know that. Chuck Beasley looked at the photograph. He wore a genial smile that seemed permanently fixed on his face. He ran his hand through his thinning hair and nodded to the state police lieutenant. That's the kid, Ben Salazar. I showed him the place this morning. Did he tell you anything about himself? Just that he was moving up from Santa Fe to go to summer school at the university. How many tenants are in the building, Mr. Beasley? Just one. It's a duplex converted from a two-story home. A young woman has the upstairs unit. She goes to the university part-time. Her name? Jessica Varela. The name didn't ring any bells for Gabe, nor did it match with any of the people Chief Kerney had interviewed. Was this Salazar interested in the apartment? I thought so at first. He wanted to know if I was showing it to anyone else anytime soon. I told him a young couple would be looking at it this evening. He even asked me what time I was showing it. What time are you showing it? 6:30. Thanks. Beasley walked to the office door with the lieutenant. As the officer got to his car, another police vehicle drove up, and a man in civilian clothes got out. The uniformed cop froze at the sight of him. The guy in civvies limped to the lieutenant and started talking. The lieutenant waved a finger in the man's face and poked him hard in the chest, his face red with anger. For a minute, Beasley thought the men were going to start fighting, but then the lieutenant backed down. Beasley watched the two men get into the lieutenant's vehicle and leave, wondering what the fuck was all that about. In front of the hardware store, Gabe killed the engine and set the brake. Kerney could have pulled his shield and weapon for any number of reasons, including insubordination and conduct unbecoming an officer. Poking the chief in the chest and calling him a stupid son of a bitch outside of Beasley's office had been a dumb thing to do. Sorry, Chief. I was way out of line. I've been half crazy. You have cause, Gabe. Let it slide. Inside the store, the manager answered Gabe's questions. Yeah, Bernardo was in this morning checking on something at the order desk. Who did he speak to? Jessica talked to him. Gabe looked at the young woman standing behind the order counter. Kerney looked over at the young blonde woman. Can you relieve her for a few minutes and give us a place where we can talk? Sure. Use the break room in the back. I'll have Jessica meet you there. Just off the receiving dock, the break room doubled as a storage room for excess inventory. Jessica Varela entered and shyly pushed some strands of hair away from her face. She kept her head slightly lowered and gave Kerney a sidelong, timid look. What's this all about? You spoke to Bernardo Varela this morning? I don't know why he came in. He knew the fence post driver he ordered wouldn't be here for another 10 days. Did he talk to you about anything else? He always tries to talk to me. I don't mind it if I'm not busy. What did he talk about this morning? Silly stuff. He wanted to know if I like to study and do homework with other students in my classes. He knows you go to the university? Sure. What else does he know about you? That I'm divorced, and that I moved up here from Albuquerque, how old I am. That's about it. Has he tried to date you? I think he'd like to, but he hasn't asked. I turned him down anyway. He's too young, and I'm not interested in dating right now. What exactly did you tell him about your study habits? Just that I like to study alone, and with my job and school and all, I don't have a lot of time to socialize and stuff. Did you mention there was an apartment for rent in your building? Why would I do that? He didn't ask. Why should he? He doesn't know where I live. You're scaring me with these questions. What's going on? We think Bernardo is a stalker. And he's stalking me? Possibly. What should I do? Keep to your normal routine. We'll be watching Bernardo. What about me? Who'll be protecting me? There will be a plainclothes officer following you when you leave work. You'll be under constant observation. For how long? Until the situation is resolved. I'd like your keys to take a look inside your apartment. What for? To make sure Bernardo hasn't been there. With Gabe at his heels, Kerney checked the front door, found it locked, walked to the backyard, and tried the rear door to the empty apartment. The doorknob turned, and he stepped inside the kitchen of the empty apartment. Gabe moved to the sink. This window is unlatched, Chief. I think Bernardo is ready to make his move. I hope you're right. Gabe stared out the window and thought about what Orlando had to do with all this. By now he had to suspect Orlando and Bernardo were somehow linked together in the Luisa San Miguel slaying. Maybe Orlando had been just a witness to the rape and murder, or maybe he was an equal partner in the crime. Whatever fell out, it was impossible to dismiss Orlando's disappearance as a coincidence. Bernardo threw the empty beer can out of the truck window and popped open another one, swallowed some beer, thought about Jessica Varela, and got a warm feeling in his groin. Everything he knew about her told him she was going to do exactly what he wanted, the way he wanted. He finished the beer, flipped the can out the window, and fired up the truck. On the highway into town, a state police cruiser passed him going in the opposite direction. He smiled and waved, and the cop waved back. He watched in his rearview mirror. The cop kept heading south without slowing. Cops, including Orlando's old man and that gringo with the limp, were stupid fuckers. Beasley and his prospective renters showed up late and didn't leave until 8 o'clock. Kerney and Gabe waited until they drove away before approaching the house. Ben Morfin, who'd been glued to Barella since he'd been sighted on the highway, came on Kearney's handheld as they crossed the street. "He's moving toward town, Chief." Kerney unlocked Jessica Varella's front door. "What's his ETA?" 3 minutes max." With Gabe behind him, Kerney hurried up the stairs. He opened the door and used his flashlight to scan the front room. It was crammed with furniture. Magazines and newspapers littered a glass-top coffee table and spilled over onto the floor. "He's just parked 3 blocks away, Chief. He's on foot and carrying a small bag." Kerney turned to Gabe. "I'll take the bedroom. You take the closet. I want first crack at him, Chief." "Do it by the book, Lieutenant." 2 blocks, Chief." Kerney clicked his send button to acknowledge Ben's transmission. "I want Barella all the way inside, understand? We don't move until we see what he does." Gabe nodded, switched off his flashlight, and got inside the closet. In the bedroom, Kerney fanned his flashlight quickly over the room before killing it. The apartment felt like a hideaway from the world. Kerney doubted that another human being had been in the place since the day Jessica moved in. "Chief, he's in the garage at the back of the house. We're going off the air. 2 radio clicks mean you move." Kerney wondered what Gabe would do once he got his hands on Bernardo. Kerney wanted answers as badly as Gabe. Should he let Gabe step over the line, or hold him back? The sound of footsteps on the stairs made Kerney stop thinking about Gabe. He heard the rattling of tools, followed by the sound of a hammer striking metal. It made no sense until Kerney realized Bernardo was taking the door off the hinges. The first pin popped free and clanged against the wood floor of the landing. 2 more pins fell, and Kerney heard the scrape of metal against metal as Bernardo pulled the locked door free. It thudded against the threshold. A brief silence was followed by the sound of the hammer striking metal again as Bernardo rehung the door. Then the door closed and the deadbolt clicked into place. Through the crack of the door, Kerney could see the beam of Bernardo's flashlight sweep across the living room. Bernardo put the flashlight on the coffee table, dropped to his knees, took a blanket out of the bag and spread it on the floor. He reached into the bag again, removed a long-handled butcher knife, and placed it on the blanket. He brought out 2 candles, placed them on the coffee table, and lit them. Then he sat on the blanket, stripped to the waist, and started sharpening the knife with a whetstone. Finished, he put the knife down, stood up, and walked to the bedroom door. Kerney took a step back, clicked the transmit button twice to signal Gabe, and tossed the handheld on the bed. When the door opened, he stepped forward and slapped the barrel of his semi-automatic against Bernardo's mouth. Barella reeled back into Gabe's arms. Gabe spun him quickly, slammed him against the wall, and stuck his weapon into Bernardo's bloodied mouth, breaking teeth as he did it. Kerney hit the light switch, and Bernardo blinked in the glare. Gabe forced the barrel deep into Bernardo's mouth. "Where's Orlando?" "He can't talk with a gun in his mouth, Gabe. He can move his fucking head. Is my son alive?" Bernardo didn't react. Gabe cocked his weapon. Bernardo gurgled, choking on the barrel. Kerney picked up Bernardo's butcher knife and held it out. "Don't kill him with the gun. Use the knife. Open him up from his balls to his neck." Gabe shook his head and jammed the gun barrel to the back of Bernardo's throat. "Fuck the knife. Is Orlando dead?" Bernardo's eyes grew wide and he nodded. "Did you kill him?" Bernardo nodded again. "You pissant little fucker. Take the gun out of his mouth, Gabe." "Fuck you, Kerney." Gabe's eyes bored into Bernardo. "Where is he? Where's Orlando?" Bernardo gurgled some more. "The gun, Gabe." Gabe yanked the barrel out, busted Bernardo across the nose, and kneed him hard in the groin. Blood spurted down the front of Bernardo's bare chest as he sank to the floor, gasping in pain. Gabe holstered his weapon and held out his hand. "Give me the fucking knife, Kerney." He took it, knelt down, and pulled Bernardo's hands away from his groin. When the point of the butcher knife pricked Bernardo's balls, he started spilling his guts. Arlen Fullerton brought the bulldozer out to the ranch road and started stripping dirt at the spot where Kerney had told him to start digging. 5 officers stood nearby. Fullerton trenched 2 feet down until the blade hit a buried granite boulder. That's how Bernardo gouged the bulldozer's lip, he thought, as he skipped over the obstruction and started scraping away broken shale and sandstone. The policemen on either side of the trench stood like statues as he worked, not talking, just staring and beaming their flashlights into the ever-deepening ditch. Fullerton didn't want to mangle the body, so it took a while to get 3 feet down. Even then, nothing showed. He climbed out of the cab, walked to the back of the machine, got 2 long-handled shovels off a jerry-rigged rack, and approached Kerney. "Best to dig by hand from here." Kerney and Gabe climbed into the hole and started digging. The 3 other officers stood at the edge of the pit and watched. When Kerney exposed the body, Gabe Gonzalez sank to his knees and started retching, his head turned away from the crushed face. Art Garcia dropped into the trench, pulled the lieutenant to his feet, and hauled him out. Gabe quickly broke away from the group and walked into the darkness. Gabe didn't cry as he walked down the road, but his breath sounded ragged. Kerney stayed a few steps behind, keeping his distance. When Gabe stopped, a long time passed before he spoke. "I wanted a good life for him, Chief. College, a decent job, meet the right girl, start a family, make me proud. You know what I mean?" "I do. I always thought he'd be a great father. Better than me. Kids just seemed to take to him. He had a way with kids." Kerney didn't respond. "Jesus, he was a fucking rapist, Kerney. Maybe Bernardo made that part up. You know he didn't. There was a lot of good in Orlando, Gabe. He was my only son, my only child. I know. I raised him better than this. I know. What the fuck did I do wrong?" "You can't take the blame." "Then who does, Chief? Tell me that. Who the fuck does?" Kerney guided Gabe to a unit and put him inside. Garduno met Kerney at the front of the squad car. "Is he okay?" "How can he be? I'm taking him home. I want somebody with him all night and all day tomorrow. Maybe longer. We need to keep a close watch on him. A real close watch." Kerney spent the next day in Las Vegas doing paperwork, dealing with the news media, and meeting with the ADA who had been assigned to prosecute Bernardo. The ADA had questioned Kerney closely about the incidents leading up to the arrest. Without batting an eye, Kerney lied about the facts. He told the ADA that Bernardo had entered Jessica's apartment armed with a deadly weapon, and in the scuffle to disarm him, necessary force had been used. He knew full well he would have to perjure himself at trial, otherwise Bernardo's confession could be thrown out of court and the case dismissed. Lying wasn't something Kerney enjoyed doing, or had ever done before in a criminal matter, but truth, in this instance, wouldn't serve justice. The ADA seemed to buy Kerney's version of the facts, at least for the present, but Kerney needed to clue Gabe in on the spin, just in case the ADA decided to call and take a preliminary statement from Gabe over the phone. He parked his unit, stood on the sidewalk in front of Gabe's house, and looked around. Lovingly cared for, the house was a 2.5-story clapboard Victorian with a sloping mansard roof, an arched tower with circular windows, a widow's walk on the top level, and lead-glass windows. Art Garcia, dressed in civvies, his eyes ringed with dark circles, came out to meet Kerney as he opened the gate to the walkway. "How is he, Art?" "Sleeping. The doctor gave him a sedative. Gabe's got an appointment to see a shrink in the morning. I sent all the relatives away about 2 hours ago. Did his ex-wife come up from Albuquerque? That was ugly. She made it sound like Gabe was responsible for Orlando's murder. That nearly flipped him out. Keep her away from Gabe if she acts up again. He doesn't need a guilt trip laid on him. He's carrying enough as it is. I'll let the troops know. You need to speak to Gabe, I can wake him up. Let him sleep. Tell him it's very important not to talk to the ADA until he speaks with me." "Will do." "Have the funeral services for Orlando been set?" "Not yet. Gabe told me he put a big hurt on Bernardo to get the confession. I didn't see it that way. I told the ADA we used reasonable force to stop the action and Bernardo's confession was voluntary. I'll tell him that when he wakes up." Kerney called Dale Jennings at 5:30 Saturday morning, just as Sarah came out of the bedroom wearing nothing but panties. She kissed him on the cheek, ruffled his hair, and moved to the kitchen, drawn by the smell of fresh coffee. Dale answered on the first ring. "Have you had your coffee yet?" Kerney knew full well Dale had been up for at least an hour. "Yep. I don't have a cushy 8-to-5 job like you. Gotta work for a living." "Are you sitting down?" "Should I be?" "Maybe. Sarah and I are getting married." "Whew! Well, I'll be damned. What a lucky son of a bitch you are." "I know it. I want you to be my best man." "Tell me when and tell me where." "Montana in a week, at the Brandon Ranch. Can you, Barbara, and the girls make it?" "Wouldn't miss it." "Damn, Kerney. I'm happy for you. It's about time." "Yeah, I'm pretty happy myself." Sarah came back from the kitchen, sat next to Kerney on the couch, and sipped her coffee. "You got yourself a prize, old friend." "My prize is nibbling on my ear as we speak." "Barbara hasn't nibbled on my ear in a week." "I hear that happens to old married folks." "Stop wisecracking and put the bride-to-be on the phone. Maybe I can talk her out of making a big mistake." "Who's wisecracking now?" Kerney held the phone out to Sarah. "He's all yours." Sarah put the coffee cup down, covered the receiver with her hand, and glanced at Kerney's crotch. "You look very sexy in boxer shorts. What's that thing that's poking out?" "A surprise." "I like surprises." She took her hand off the receiver and sat on Kerney's lap, facing him. "Dale, can I call you right back in about 20 minutes?" Kerney and Sarah arrived at the old stone cabin at the foot of the mesa to find the gate open and a dozen or so vehicles neatly parked. Kerney had filled Sarah in on the weekend project underway at the Knowlton cactus site, and the demand Ruth Pino had made that he meet with a Nature Conservancy staffer. "It seems she has everything well organized, Kerney." "I don't think Professor Pino leaves much to chance. I'll bet she's working her volunteers like an infantry squad on bivouac." "She's not your favorite person." "Maybe you can relate to her." "Are we hiking in on our own, or taking the Ruth Pino guided nature tour?" Sarah reached for her backpack and slipped her arms into the shoulder straps. "We'll hike." Kerney slung on his backpack and made a beeline up the side of the mesa. At the top, Sarah tried to slow Kerney down. She stopped to take in the view, examine wildflowers, and adjust a harness on her pack. Each time Kerney waited impatiently, looking preoccupied and withdrawn before striding off again. When they reached the windmill and stock tank, Sarah tugged on Kerney's shirt sleeve. "Want to talk about it?" "About what?" "Your silence. This forced march pace we're on. The fact you haven't said 5 words in the last hour." "Sorry. What's bothering you?" "I can't get Gabe Gonzalez out of my mind." "You're worried about him?" "He's a damn good man, and his life has been ripped apart. He has to live with the fact that his murdered son was a rapist." "That can't be easy, Kerney." "It's 100 times worse if you're a cop." "Can Gabe cope?" "I hope so. I don't know." "What about you, my love?" "Me?" "You don't seem very happy." Kerney looked at the high flanks of the mountains that dominated the skyline and the soft green spring grass that rippled across the mesa. "I've been trying to enjoy myself, but it isn't working. I can't hold on to this land, Sarah." "Then sell it." "That's what Dale said. I've got no choice in the matter anyway." "Do it." "Irma wanted me to have it." "Irma wanted you to be happy. That was her gift to you. Use it to make her wish come true." "Think she would understand?" "Of course." Sarah pulled Kerney by the collar and kissed him on the lips. "What's that for?" "Luck. Let's go hear what kind of a deal the Nature Conservancy has to offer. Just don't give the place away." "I'm not that stupid." "You better not be." After arriving at the Knowlton cactus site, Kerney and Sarah worked through the morning with Ruth Pino and her volunteers, setting fence posts and stringing wire. At the noon lunch break, they sat down with Reese Carson and listened to his proposal. The Nature Conservancy wanted to buy all 10 sections, not only to protect the rare Knowlton cactus, but to stop any further subdivision of the land. The open range on the mesa influenced the Nature Conservancy's decision. As one of the last grassland mesas in the area, the land was prime grazing for deer and elk migrating down from the mountains. "It would be a wonderful plant and wildlife habitat, Mr. Kerney. I hope you'll consider selling it to us." "At full value, Mr. Carson?" "No. You sell the property to us for less than the appraisal, but it reduces your state and federal taxes. While it's not an even trade-off, you get the satisfaction of not paying the full tax burden and ensuring that the land remains intact and unspoiled." "How much of a per-acre reduction are you looking at?" "We can negotiate that. If you agree in principle to the idea, we'll crunch some numbers for you at different per-acre costs. I promise you'll come out of the deal well compensated." "Give me a ballpark figure." "We've got to do the math first, Mr. Kerney, but you'll still be a very rich man." Kerney mulled it over. He'd always hoped to scratch together just enough cash to get a ranch started, never expecting more would ever be possible. Even if he gave up some of the proceeds, the mesa would be protected, and he would still be able to comfortably realize his dream. "Mr. Kerney, you can verify our financial analysis with your own CPA before deciding on our offer." Kerney looked at Sarah. She nodded her head. "I think Irma would like to see the land stay just the way it is." Kerney smiled and turned to Carson. "Go ahead and crunch the numbers. We'll take a look at your offer." "That's great, Mr. Kerney." Sarah looked pleased. "What are you going to call the preserve, Mr. Carson?" "We usually retain the most commonly used place name." "Well then, I think it should be called the Ferguson Mesa Ranch." Kerney piped in with his suggestion. "Or the Irma Ferguson Ranch." Sarah countered. "Or the Emma Ferguson Mesa Ranch Preserve." Reese Carson smiled at Kerney and Sarah. "If we strike a deal, and the two of you can agree, you can stipulate the name. I'll put it in the contract as a condition of the sale." 2 weeks after Orlando's funeral, Gabe knew that everything had changed forever. The terrible burning sensation in his stomach never stopped, and at night sleep came only after he took a sedative. But the pills didn't keep away the dreams that left him dazed in the morning, wondering if he'd been sleeping or hallucinating. In his therapy sessions, the shrink kept pushing him to talk about his grief, anger and pain. Although he felt empty and drained, Gabe faked it well enough to get a green light to return to duty. He sat on the living room couch and stared at the television. Tomorrow he was due back to work. All his thank you notes for the sympathy cards were ready to be mailed. Chief Kerney wouldn't get his note until he got back from his honeymoon in Ireland. He gathered them up, took them to the mailbox outside the public library, and dropped them down the chute. This was the first night that he wasn't being watched like a hawk by some cop pretending to keep him company. It felt good not to bullshit people that he was doing all right. On his way back to the house, Gabe looked at the moon and saw 2 bright stars nearby. He didn't know much about stars, constellations, or astronomy. Maybe they were satellites, but satellites weren't supposed to flicker. Orlando would have known whether they were stars or not, Gabe thought as he stood in his front yard. But Orlando would never be around to tell him such things again. He placed the muzzle of the pistol in his ear, but couldn't pull the trigger. His hand shook so hard the weapon banged against his cheekbone. He lowered the gun and stared at the house his grandfather had built, wondering why he'd put in all his time, money, and effort into restoring it. His family was shattered, and his pride in what the house once represented no longer mattered. He leveled the gun at the living room window and pulled off around. The leaded glass shattered. He kept pointing and firing at every window in the front of the house until the handgun emptied. Lights went on inside the neighboring houses. As a growing sound of a siren pierced the night, Gabe walked to the porch step, sat, and stared at the ground. Glare from a spotlight washed over him, and Art Garcia's voice came out of the darkness. "Toss the handgun, Gabe." "It's empty, Art." "Please, Gabe, lose the gun." Gabe flipped it onto the grass and started crying, unable to hold back the sobs. Art sat on the porch step, put an arm around Gabe's shoulders, and waited for the crying to stop. When Gabe opened his eyes, he saw Russell Thorpe, Ben Morfin, Captain Garduno, and several state and city patrol officers standing in the front yard. Embarrassed, he dropped his head, took a deep breath, and let it out slowly. "What am I going to do, Art?" "You'll get through it, my friend."